Who all from the planning department is on the call? I've got Byron, Rob, Gunner, Janet.
Kim.
Kim, what's your last name again? I can't see the whole. There it is.
Portillo.
Portillo.
Michael Farley.
I got Michael. Okay.
And I believe Shannon Chanteau is called in, but she's not shown up as a panelist. She might just be an attendee.
What's Shanna's last name?
Chanteau, Shanteau.
And it's Shanna, not Shannon.
Correct. Shanna,
Okay.
like Shayna,
Right.
Excuse me.
Right. Is it Shayna or Shanna?
It's pronounced Shayna. I apologize.
I'm bringing her in as a panelist. Shanna, you're on.
Is Robert Anderson on?
Yes, he is on.
I'm here. Sorry.
And I see Janet Parker, so we're good to go.
We can wait till 6:30, and we're still having YouTube issues.
So at this point, we're missing Susanna Pauly and Cherish Cho, correct, as far as commissioners?
That's what it's looking like to me.
Okay.
Susanna was on. I guess she had to drop off or just is gone for a minute.
Okay.
Oh, there's Cherish Cho right down here. She's muted.
Okay.
And Chairman Carson, Janet Parker was able to figure it out. She's up and running now.
Yep, I saw that.
See her, yes. Are we going to take the traditional break between the two meetings? We're going to do a 5-minute recess, or are we just going to go from one to the other?
Whatever makes you comfortable.
Well, that would not be doing any of this.
Well, yes, of course. I'm fine with a recess. I think it's fine to take a 5-minute break,
Okay.
folks, but everybody would want to turn off their videos.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
And real quick, was everybody okay with the rules that were sent out earlier? If you're going to maintain your video screen at all times, make sure you stay at your seats. If anybody has to get up and leave, make sure you turn your video off. If you have to recuse yourself during any portion of it, go ahead and turn your video off, and then we'll bring you back on. It's okay if you leave your microphones and things on. We'll mute you, but you can go ahead and shut off your video if you feel that's necessary to keep your face from showing any type of emotion or anything like that during the case in which you have to recuse yourself on. Melissa will let me know when you raise your hand to speak, and then we will call on you by your name, so you won't have to introduce yourself each time. We will introduce you when we call you on when we call on you to speak. Okay. I feel like a Saturday Night Live castmate right now, getting ready to do this for the first time.
Well, if anybody's interested, you can blur your background. So if you want to, that's something you can do. If you don't know how, we can teach you that as well. So
Well, I've worked with lighting all day long. This is as flattering as I'm going to look.
I changed locations for you, Jeff.
Oh, yeah, you did. I was say something's different.
Came into the office. Hadn't been in here in almost 2 weeks. My chair here is much more comfortable though.
I've had the same work chair for 17 years. Brought it home and it broke somewhere in the travel. So it is propped up with a piece of plumbing pipe. Otherwise, I would be sinking as we speak. I'd be lowering myself to it.
I
Sounds
just
like
got
it.
a new one.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
new investment.
Yeah, probably so. But that $4 plumbing pipe, it works.
I
My
call
wife
it
said
very resourceful.
My wife said the same. Well, you should have seen me trying to cut the pipe and everything else. It wasn't pretty.
You probably look like me using a circular saw for the first time this weekend.
Well, and there's a bunch of leftover pieces. I don't know why we needed all those pieces all this time, but I had a bunch of leftover ones. But if all of a sudden I start to sink or something, just let me know that I'm disappearing from the camera.
We have 40 attendees. I don't know if you can see that, Commissioner Carson.
I see 64 participants total. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 40 of those are attendees. All right.
Okay. Yep.
And there's about 7 of them that I will not be able to tell based on the phone number who they are, but
Okay.
the rest of them all have names.
And we're about 5 minutes away from start time.
Yep. And we just added another participant.
Jake Miller.
Jeff, this is Janet.
Yes.
Is the whole commission on?
I have everyone accounted for except for Commissioner Polly, and she was on the call. She was on the call, but we don't know if she had to dial back in or not.
Oh, okay, because I saw her picture just a few minutes ago.
Commissioner Polly, are you on? I'm assuming not. Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Can you adjust your camera so we can see your best side?
I don't even see my video. There you go. How's that look?
No. Maybe
There's
you just.
no
How about if we stop video on Miller? Can we do that?
That's the only way I'll look good.
I was like, what's wrong?
Just because this is a virtual meeting, I'm not going to let up on anybody. So those that I pick on, I will continue to do so.
Okay, and I can see Susanna on the monitor.
Okay.
Oh, there she is. Okay, good.
You got her?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there she is.
Yep.
Gotcha.
If that means I can make fun of you too. You look like a gamer right now.
Mute him, please, Melissa.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
So,
that'll be the last we hear of him tonight.
Yeah.
Yes.
So since we have 9 on the call, it will take 5 to pass a motion.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Marge, dear, how does one raise one's hand to speak?
Yeah, so if you go over and find your name, so do you have all your participants up?
I have a free box at the top. So I can,
Yeah, if you go down to the middle of the bottom of the screen, there's a taskbar that'll show mute, stop video, and then in the middle it'll say participants. And if you click that, that'll bring people up. And then when you find your name, there's a spot where it says to raise your hand. And if you want to test that, I'll see if I see your hand.
If you go to the very bottom of the screen, you'll see invite, mute me, and raise hand. The very bottom of that list.
got it.
Yeah, and your hand is up right now. I see it.
Yep. I'm lowering it. I saw somebody else's. I'll lower that one too.
So Melissa, again, can you tell them how it's going to work when they get called on? Will they have to unmute themselves or will you be doing it for them?
I can go ahead and undo it while I'm saying their name.
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody okay with that?
And then
Yes.
then wait till I finish saying your name and then you should be able to talk.
I only said yes.
You said yes? All right.
Yeah. That's a barely. I hardly ever say yes. No.
I like it.
All right.
Mr. Connolly, they gave me the permission to mute you at any time I needed to.
He's already muted himself.
Okay. All right. I understand, Jeff. I'm the problem child. All right.
Okay, I see it's 6:30. Is everybody ready to start?
Jeff, this is Rob. One quick thing. You might have anybody that's called in with just a phone number. If they're one of our applicants, we ought to have them raise their hand and let them speak to tell us who they are so we know when to call on them in the future. Or I guess we could do that just right then, but YouTube is up and running now. I think we have one person in the commission chamber.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Jeff Carson. I am the chairman of tonight's Board of Zoning Appeals and Planning Commission. We're doing things a little bit differently this month due to all the things that are going on in the world right now. So I'm going to make a few introductions before we get started. So on the call this evening, I've got Gunnar Hand, who is the Director of Urban Planning and Land Use. Janet Parker, who you'll be hearing from a lot this evening. She'll be reading the opening statement in just a few moments. She is the Administrative Assistant to the Department of Urban Planning and Land Use. I have Rob Richardson, who's the former Director of the Urban Planning Office. Melissa Sieben, the Assistant County Administrator. I have the members of the planning staff, Byron Toy, Kim Portillo, Michael Farley, and Shana Chanteau. I also have on the call Jeff Fisher, Director of Public Works, and Robert Anderson, Public Works Asset Manager. Here tonight at the commission, we'll be doing roll call, but we have Commissioner James Ernst, Commissioner James Connolly, Commissioner Joanne Huey, Commissioner Nathan Reasons, Commissioner Jake Miller, Commissioner Susanna Pauley, Commissioner and Vice Chair Karen Jones, and Commissioner Cherish Cho. So with that said, I will go ahead and turn the meeting over to the Administrative Assistant, Janet Parker, who will read the opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I read the statement, I did want to inform the Board of Zoning Appeals that Dr. Reverend Steve Neal has resigned from the Board of Zoning Appeals. We would like to welcome all those present and participating by telephone or Zoom to the meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Due to the COVID-19 crisis, the members are participating remotely by phone or Zoom. Mr. Jeff Carson is serving as chairman this evening. Chairman Carson, I did not receive any requests from the public to be a part of the meeting via telephone. All requests were for the instructions to sign up for the Zoom webinar. Please note the following instructions for the meeting. If you are joining by Zoom video, please make sure you have an appropriate background and plan to stay visible during the meeting. Please don't get up and walk around. When speaking, if you have not been announced by the Zoom moderator or chair, you must raise your hand feature. When speaking, you need to wait to be unmuted by the moderator. Board members, use the raise your hand feature to speak. If you need to recuse or if you need a personal break, use the raise your hand feature. Due to the format, the Zoom monitor will work with the chair to recognize those that want to speak. There will be times when we ask that everyone but the applicant unraise their hand. Be sure to unmute your microphone when it is your time to speak. If anyone is having trouble, you should email planninginfo@wicokck.org, and Secretary Parker is monitoring that mailbox during the meeting. Proper meeting decorum is expected of all participating in the meeting, and anyone who fails to act properly may be removed from the meeting. The city reserves the right to discontinue a meeting if any improper behavior occurs which prevents the uninterrupted conduct of business. The format for this evening's meeting is as follows. The applicant will make the opening statement explaining the proposal. The applicant will be given 15 minutes to present their case, which includes the applicant, consultants, and other members of the applicant's team. Members of the board will then address any questions they may have to the applicant. Any persons wishing to speak in favor will be allowed to do so at that time. Then those persons in opposition will be recognized to make their statements and ask questions, with each member of the public being given 5 minutes to express their opinions. Time may not be shared between speakers. A speaker's time may be extended in 5-minute increments by a 2/3 majority vote of the board. The applicant will then answer questions and make a closing statement. The public hearing portion of the meeting will then be closed, and the public will only be allowed to address the board if a question is directed to them. The staff will make their recommendation. The board will discuss the application and make their decision with a brief statement of the reason for the motion preceding the making of the motion. Motions to approve shall include the staff stipulations unless otherwise stated in the motion. Mr. Chairman, we have 2 items on the Board of Zoning Appeals agenda tonight. The first one is appeal number 2356, Fred Del Toro, for property at 3447 North 31st Terrace. Does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
No.
Mr. Chairman, this application was heard at the December 9, 2019 and February 10, 2020 Board of Zoning Appeals meetings, and that testimony is part of the record. This application was held over from the February 10, 2020 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting for one specific reason, and that was for the applicant to have a meeting with the stakeholders, the people within 200 feet, and people who took, at the time, Director Richardson's card and let him know that they would like to be included. Results of that meeting have been included in the staff report. Also, I will note that I did receive 4 emails today in opposition from Anna Brown, Brenda Van, Louisa Libby, and Marvin Robinson II.
Thank you. Is Mr. Del Toro in the room or on the meeting? Excuse me. Mr. Del Toro, are you available to speak?
Yeah, he's allowed to talk now.
Yes.
Mr. Del Toro?
Hello, can you guys hear me? This is Fred Del Toro speaking.
Yes, please. Could you go ahead and, for the record, give us your name and address, and then tell us what has transpired since our last meeting? I know you had a meeting with the shareholders. If you could please tell us the results of that meeting.
Yes, full name, Fred Del Toro. Address is 3447 North 31st Terrace. And then this was also in conjunction with the other opposite location on the west side, which is 3456 North 31st Terrace. The meeting was held the following weekend, right after the previous court hearing, which was, I believe, February 15th, 2020 on a Saturday. The results of that meeting was agree to disagree. There was no side that was agreeing to either or.
Okay. Do we have any questions for the applicant? Okay, I'm seeing none. I'm going to go ahead and ask any member of the public that would like to speak in favor
We
of
just
this.
have one question. Mr. Connolly would like to be recognized.
Commissioner Connolly.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Mr. Del Toro, I mean, what does he mean that there was no type of an agreement? What was kind of discussed on what they were trying to do, or the meeting was, I guess, what was discussed, I guess. So what mean there was no kind of an agreement? What was trying to be agreed to?
Mr. Del Toro?
We were discussing whether I can go ahead and place an animal in there in a building or a stable, and then the other side to put some livestock. The dialogue back and forth was the opposition was they don't want anything on in that area. They don't want anything in there, and my viewpoint was I did want to build some stuff in there and continue forward.
Sir, can you get closer to your speaker?
Yes. Is better?
There
Yes.
you go.
Okay. The meeting, the opposition side was for nothing to be built, to be placed in those properties. My side was just going in there and continue with the application process. And so it was stated, or I had mentioned, we can probably build, or I can build a fence around the entire area of the property. If the concern is if any kind of livestock can get out of the area. But the conclusion was no, there should be nothing to be installed in that area.
Commissioner Carson, Commissioner Connolly has a question.
Yes. Commissioner Connolly.
Yeah, Mr. Del Toro, I guess, did you have a clear understanding that people at the meeting thought that was a historical site or historical to them? Did you understand that, or it didn't matter, or how did you feel about that?
Yes, I did. I was informed about the historical value in it. Property, both of the properties are entrance towards the cemetery, but they are not near, as it's kind of been stated before. I am well aware about the historical value. I am not going in there to put lesser value to it. I do respect that. I did communicate that to them as well.
Well, I guess well, I'm glad you meet. I was one of those people that kind of target that you meet with some of those stockholders, and I guess you have an understanding of their side and them having an understanding of your side. I guess that was why y'all had the meeting. Now, was anything mentioned about you selling it to that group or anything like that?
That was Commissioner Connolly. I just want to make sure the group understands that was who was making the statement.
Thank you.
Yes, it was mentioned. It was suggested to me to go back and talk to the county or talk to the governing body to return the property back to, I had purchased this property from a delinquent sales tax. I was informed I should go back and get my money back and just not be in the property in that area. It was suggested, and I think one thing we did all agree on was to put a gate. There has been a gate at the very front entrance. I have been informed from different bodies, whether being the police, the sheriff, the government itself, such as inspectors. And I was informed to leave the gate open. If you can see at the very bottom left side at the entrance where that park is at, there had been a gate in that area. On the meeting in February, on the court, it was suggested, or it was kind of alluded that another gate perhaps could be placed at the very end of that yellow highlighted portion. But the difficulty with that is there is another owner within the area, so that owner will have to be contacted to see if we can put a gate in there. That's one thing that we kind of did agree on, to put a gate.
Are there further questions?
Commissioner Carson, there's a member of the public that would like to be allowed to talk. Carissa,
Okay.
Pulliam.
Okay, we will open up the public portion in just a moment. Is there any other questions for the applicant before we open the public portion of the meeting? Commissioner Connolly, your hand is up. You need to unmute.
I unmuted him.
Commissioner Connolly?
Yeah, I guess I got to get used to this. So I got to raise my hand every time, even though I guess I'm talking. And I guess once I ask the question.
Yes, we're gonna have to for the record of the meeting, we're gonna have to address you each time. So yes.
Okay.
Please.
All right. Thanks. Yeah, Mr. DeToro. Now, did the owner of the cemetery show up at the meeting?
Hello?
I said, did the owner of the cemetery show up at the meeting?
I had a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 13 signatures that were signed in the moments of minutes meeting. The person that did show up, I didn't know what was the role of every person that showed up. The Quindero from the museum, the gentleman that handles the museum, he did show up. I don't believe the owner of the cemetery showed up, but I may be corrected.
All right.
Commissioner Ernst?
Yes.
Mr. Del Toro,
Mr. Del Toro, Commissioner Ernst has a question for you.
Yes.
in your notes, you mentioned you would be willing to move the stable anywhere on the property that was deemed better. Where exactly, since I don't have the benefit of the big screen down there or a 32-inch here, were you putting the stable?
Hello. So the stable, I just drew it within that portion, that screenshot. I had mentioned to, and one of the questions that had been asked, where if the stable needed to move, I said, if I need to move it more down south so it can be away from the cemetery, I would go ahead and willingly do that.
Would you be willing to put it in what I'll call the southeast corner of your lot, which would move it further from the street and further from the cemetery?
That was Commissioner Jim Ernst.
The issue with that portion is there is a body of water, a creek in that area. Also as well, there is the neighbor on the south area, that portion of my property is kind of taking over some of my plot of land in there as well.
Commissioner Ernst, did you have a follow-up?
No, I think I'll let that stand.
Okay. Are there any further questions for the applicant before I open the public portion of the meeting?
Commissioner Susanna, I'm sorry, it's cutting off.
Commissioner Pauly?
Commissioner Pauly.
Yeah, so first of all, I apologize because I wasn't at the earlier hearing, so you guys might have already covered this. However, what I wanted to know is, were some of the sort of code violation issues sorted? Have those things been sorted yet? With some of the debris around the property?
Hello?
Commissioner Toro, did you hear, I'm sorry, Mr. Del Toro, did you hear the question? Commissioner Pauly wanted to know about some of the code violations you had on the property and whether those have been rectified or they're in the process of being rectified.
Yes, they have been issued. The property 3447 North 31st Street, the one where the horse is at, the structure has been taken all the way down. That portion, there was no violation for that. Part of the request on the application is to build as you can see on the left side, a shed area for storage. In the meantime, that area is being used to keep the food or the hay dry.
Commissioner Pauly, that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions for the applicant before I open the public portion of the meeting? Seeing none, I will open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of this application?
Yes, I have two, or now three individuals that are interested, but the first one that I have up is Chrissa Pulliam, and I'm going to go ahead and unmute her.
Ms. Pulliam, if you'd give your name and address, please, for the record.
I'm muted.
There we go. You should be
Okay,
unmuted.
thank you. My name is Carissa Pulliam. My address is 4132 South Minnie, Kansas City, Kansas 66103. Um, I sent a email earlier today with pictures because I am a vested member of the community who I have grandparents that are actually buried in the cemetery there. And I'm not really for certain how long this has been going on where the horses and the chicken coop and all of this debris and trash have been in this particular area. But I am against a anything being built there because essentially this is a cemetery. Whether he recognizes that or not, I think it's definitely something because no other cemetery you're not able to go and just build a horse stable or a chicken coop just because you see that it's open land.
Okay, but you recognize, Ms. Pulliam, that the property that the gentleman wants to do this on is not cemetery property. It is adjacent to the cemetery. It is not cemetery property.
Right. However, the idea for him to move it further southeast would probably be more ideal than him just like taking up land to build in that particular area, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Did you have anything else you wanted to bring up?
No, that's it.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Connolly, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question for her. Can you hear me?
Ms. Pulliam, are you still?
I'm still here.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Connolly.
Yeah, my question is, have they talked to the owner of the cemetery at all? Anybody?
I have not. No.
Okay. Do you know the owner of the cemetery?
No, I do not.
Okay. Now you said you had some relatives staying there?
I have relatives that are buried there, yes.
I meant buried there. I'm sorry. So how often do you think you visit that area?
Probably a few times. It's not a lot, but probably 3 to 6 times out of the year.
Okay. All right. Now you said that you just recently took some pictures and the area still looks kind of bad. Is that what you're saying?
That was from about 3 weeks ago, 2 to 3 weeks ago. We had a funeral and we had to bury someone there. And my grandmother's tombstone is rattled with bullets like somebody is just shooting rounds or whatever the case may be.
Now, you know that the owner's not talking about the cemetery. We're talking.
Right. I understand that.
Okay.
But like going up into that particular area, there was all of that debris and everything like that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Ms. Steven, is there someone else from the public that would like to speak?
Next, I'd like to recognize Douglas Lawson. Douglas Lawson, you're available to talk.
Mr. Wasson, if you'd give us your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Douglas Lawson. It's 32 Royal Drive, Kansas City, Kansas, 66111.
Yes, sir. Could you go ahead and provide your testimony?
Yes. I recently attended the funeral also, and have, since we have been in the last meeting, made several trips to see if there had been any progress on any of the cleanup, and actually get a better feel for what Mr. Del Toro was trying to accomplish down there. You can see by the conditions that horse is staying in are totally unfit to anyone that understands how to take care of animals. He has to have a variance to even have that animal on that piece of property. Now, with a variance, you would think there should be some type of understanding of how that a non-resident of that property could even possibly take care of an animal properly. Look in on it every day, especially through the winter. I sent in pictures of that animal with its hooves frozen close to 6 to 5 inches of mud. Now, because I have family that stay in that neighborhood. I'm quite over there frequently. And because of these circumstances, I go in and I check more frequently and I see that nothing has been changed or cleaned up. And my main concern is for the commissioner is why is it that there has been no effort on our county's part to enforce the cleanup. This has gone on extremely too long for most of us, and due to the circumstances of what we're dealing with today, really prevents a lot of people from coming up and expressing their opinion to you, Commissioner. This most of the folks that you understand that are vested in that graveyard don't have the opportunity to have the knowledge on how to navigate the new technology of today. So I hope you take that into consideration. So there are a few of us that are able to go ahead and give you their opinion, and I hope that you do consider that I'm speaking for a lot of people today. One of my main concerns is that even with a special permit for this to be agricultural property, you can see in the picture that there is nothing agricultural about it. Nothing really can even grow their buckweeds. There's no natural way for that horse to even get a drink of water. It relies totally on the owner. And you can see that the owner takes no care of the animal just by the circumstances that you can see in this picture. You can only imagine how much that he doesn't care about the animal, especially by looking at these pictures. I think it's embarrassing that we have to talk about how poorly this looks, especially entering into a historical site. As a member of Wyandotte County, I'm very proud to say that we are making better efforts today to take a look at that part of the city and improve it all along the lines of Leavenworth Road. We really want to see the community take pride in what we have going on here. And when we have landowners that ignore the request of the city to clean up the property and then make zero effort to do so, but yet still find the audacity to come ask for another permit to build something that would actually justify the mistreatment of the animals here. I think that it should be very embarrassing that we're even arguing this today. Pictures speak a million words, and that's where I stand on that.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Mr. Lawson?
He has 1 minute left, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I would like to ask the chairman and the board why hasn't any of this been followed up on? Why hasn't there been fines put in place for this cleanup?
We'll get some answers. We'll get some answers to those questions for you, Mr. Lawson. Is there anything else you'd like to bring up?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Carson, Commissioner Karen Jones would like to speak.
Ms. Jones? Commissioner Jones?
Mr. Lawson, I have a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. You made reference to how the area looks prior to the arrival of Mr. Del Toro, either prior or during the time that he's said to have a vested interest in the property. As far as you know, have you or any other person that has a vested interest in that area had communication with code enforcement to lodge your concern or your complaint?
No, ma'am. If I understand your question, you're asking me if I've had any dealings with code enforcement for that piece of property. Am I correct?
Commissioner Jones, we're not able to hear you. Did you understand his question?
You are concerned about you speaking. Yes, he was clarifying what I asked him, and that's correct, Mr. Lawson.
before Mr. Turo's existence on that property, it appears exactly as it was then, other than the makeshift pen and all the chicken coops and the trash. We've dealt with litter before from dumping, but never intended miscare of the properties. They were left in their natural state, which is what it is. It's a natural state. There really is no part of code enforcement that we would call and ask the property owners to clean up the running creek of fallen limbs or in such. There is a property that lies south of there that before we placed complaints on before with all the animals that were in there, and it's approximately 500 feet from the entrance. But before, there was no one able to get through the gate. And that seems to be the largest problem here, is that not only does the property look even more dilapidated from garbage, but it has allowed a flow of people that have no business to come back in there with ATVs, four-wheelers.
Okay, Mr. Lawson, I want to interrupt you for a minute. The question was, and I want to get you back to the question.
Thank you.
The question was, did you have any interaction or anyone that you know have any interaction with the public, or excuse me, the codes enforcement about this property since Mr. Del Toro had a vested interest in it? So since there's been debris or things like, did you or anyone that you know register any complaints with codes enforcement about the condition of the property?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Other than our last meeting, that's when. Okay.
Okay, that was the commissioner's question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones.
I do have several other attendees wishing to speak.
Okay, Commissioner Jones, I'm going to go back to you. Did that satisfy your question?
In part. My question also, Mr. Lawson, was even prior to Mr. Del Toro arriving on the scene, did you have communication in terms of sharing any concern or complaint you had?
Yes.
It sounds like you had some ongoing concerns.
Yes,
okay,
I've
who
had
did you share those concerns with?
Mr. Robinson.
Who was with, who, say the name again, please, Mr. Lawson?
Mr. Robinson with the concerned citizens of Quindaro.
Is that Mr. Marvin Robinson that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, and so you're saying you shared some complaints with him, but not with City Hall? Nobody with the UG?
No, this is all these complaints were brought to the people that were representing the concerned citizens.
Okay, and so
as a body, those were my complaints, taking them forward. Someone else was taking those complaints forward. Yes, Commissioner.
Okay, when you speak of the body, can you be specific? What body or group are you speaking of, Mr. Lawson?
The concerned citizens of Quindaro.
Okay.
Any further questions, Commissioner Jones?
No, none for now. Thank you.
Ms. Sieben?
All right. So now we're going to move on to our next attendee that I have up in queue is a Galaxy S9 Plus, which is an unusual name, so they're going to need to announce themselves. Okay, you've been brought into the meeting.
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me? I'm about
to
to announce myself. My name is Tasir May. I live at 212 North 38th Street in Kansas City, Kansas. And the last man who was speaking was absolutely right. The Old Quindaro Museum, Marvin Robinson, the stakeholders of the Old Quindaro ruins, and all of the groups involved have complained either by email or showed up to the planning and zoning meetings or the full commission meetings to tell them how the debris is. I myself have spoke several times about how trashed it looks on the way up to the cemetery when we have to pass old tires and horses that look like they ain't been fed for weeks and all kinds of things. So I've complained about this. Several people have complained about it. Barbara Barbara Eichert from the Old Quindaro Cemetery from the Old Quindaro Ruins and Museum has also complained about it. This is something that we've been complaining about for a very long time. And I'm in agreement. I think that he should sell it back to the people it belongs to. We will gladly come up with the money to give it back to Mr. Del Toro.
I'm going to go to Commissioner Connolly. Did you have a question for this lady?
Talking. So I'm assuming that y'all don't have an understanding that what I'm trying to say is from the last meeting, this property was also had some issues with trash and some other things before Mr. Del Toro took over the property. And now, with that being said, I'm pretty sure if this gets approved tonight, that there will be some stipulations and some guidelines of how you should keep the property. Would you be in agreement with it then?
I would be in agreement with the property being sold back to the people who actually live in that area and people who have are buried in the cemetery. That's what I really agree with. However, I do not agree with horse stables or any of that blocking it. I don't agree with the way it's being kept up. And he said he bought it from a delinquent tax sale. So that means that there was nobody there to upkeep the property before Mr. Del Toro. Now, I just joined the Old Quindaro Museum. I just moved back to Kansas a few years ago. So I was not up there and was not aware of what had happened. And since I have been aware, I have been fighting along with the other people who still live in that area, own property in that area, and have investment in that area. So, and we have been unheard most of the time. So I'm happy that we're being heard tonight. I do not agree with him building a horse stable. I do not agree with how it looks going to go and visit our relatives who have passed on Memorial Day and any other day. We have to go through a landfill.
Mr. Connolly, was your question answered?
Yes, but I had another question for her.
Commissioner Connolly?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now if he moves the stable and stuff more to the south, would that be acceptable to you?
Well, I would have to ask. I'm on the board of the Old Quindaro Museum, and I also
Ma'am, we're losing your connection.
With the rest of the people who have property in that area. I would not feel comfortable to make that decision without speaking to them first, because as it stands, nobody Old Quindaro Cemetery. We have plans for the whole area, so and horse stables and the way it's been kept to this long as he owning it, because it's been complaints previous to how it's been kept, and nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. I can drive through there right now, and I guarantee I can send you guys pictures of how it looks right now.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Connolly, has your question been answered? Thank you.
Yes, it has. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go to Anna Brown.
Jones, actually, Commissioner Karen Jones had another question.
Commissioner Jones.
For the lady that just spoke, ma'am, you made reference to having complained for a very long time. Can you be specific? When you say a very long time, is that months? Is that a year, a couple years? How long is that, and to whom?
Before I started to complain about it, which has been for a few months, maybe about 6 months, I've been complaining about this. I've talked to Gail Townsend and several other of the commissioners about what we can do about the situation. Before my time, before I got involved with this, there were several groups who were fighting for the cause of this, and I know that to be a fact. I know Marvin Robinson has been fighting for everything on the Quindaro Ruins and has been talking about how they have been upkeeping that area on the way to the cemetery and in other areas of the Old Quindaro Ruins.
Commissioner Jones, was your question answered?
Yes, thank you, it was.
All right, I'm going to go to a member of the public by the name of Anna Brown. Ms. Brown, are you in the audience?
Anna Brown, you've been allowed to speak.
This is Louisa Libby. I'm on Anna's. We're watching this together, so it would be I that would like to speak.
Okay, if you give me your name and address, please, for the record.
It's Louisa Libby, 212 Northwest North Shore Drive at Lake Wacomas, Missouri, 64151. I am a tribal member and vice president on the Council of the Wyandot Nation of Kansas. And we have been in that area and connected with Quindaro since it began back in the 1850s. And my family was part landowner. So we have gone throughout the centuries being connected with the people of Quindaro. We're also quite close with the old concerned citizens and the Hopes, and we know all the different stakeholders there. But when we come as Wyandots, we get requests to give tours, to give our story out there, and we go down and included, we go down and give tours of the cemetery, and it's disheartening to see all the blight. And you're taking people that want to come to that area and learn history and see the pride in the community. And it's really upsetting to have to take them through that area in order to get to an area of such historic value as the cemetery and the brewery and such. We are, as a nation, have been key for years and years as part of trying to get the up by the Quindaro Overlook and the town site down below. We've been working for a very, very long time and trying to get that area established and get it recognized on a national level, which is something that has in the last couple of years has really blossomed with the national recognition as of a commemorative site. And we're working diligently with the National Parks and Freedom's Frontier are helping us to get together. They're going to be putting in interpretive trails in through there and a visitor center, cultural center. And so these trails are going to go down and through that area, and for people to actually come and want to see a nationally recognized site and have to go down and walk through that in the blight. To me, if I was doing that, I would be concerned with safety and security, because you wouldn't necessarily be seeing the actual to me it just comes off wrong to have such blight and trash and all this when you're sitting right next to a national historic landmark, which the status will be coming up soon for that. The other thing, the biggest thing to me, my concern is for the people in the community, is that the fact that all of this work has been done to get economic development to come in there. You're going to have this crown jewel of the town site, and all the local and regional, state, national people that have put all their blood, sweat, and tears into this and encouraging economic development. But then are they going to be willing to come in and invest in that area if it's allowed to have blight and code violations that are not enforced and so on? And that's one of my biggest concerns as well.
Okay, Ms. Libby,
I'd like to speak.
Ms. Libby, I'm going to follow up to your testimony. So I know that you're opposed to blight, as is everyone, but are you opposed to the gentleman having the livestock on his property if his property had stipulations placed on it that the blight had to be cleaned up before he was able to do so?
I would still oppose it, because I don't believe the size of that land equates to how much land you would need for any type of livestock in that area. And also the performance and adherence to such codes in the past makes me believe that even if it's cleaned up, it's going to go back and not be kept up.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Commissioner Connolly. Do you have a question for Ms. Libby?
Sorry, I'm unmuting you. Let me do it. It's going to cause me fits. There you go. Think. One moment, technical difficulties. James, why don't you try it?
Can you hear? Can you hear
Yes.
me? Oh, okay.
For me.
Yeah, I guess I get. I hear people keep saying this. So you saying that this area is part of the National Registry for Historical Site? Is that what you're saying?
It's the application. It's right now. It is on. It has been approved by Congress and signed by President Trump. That is, it is on the national It is a national commemorative site, which is only one of 3 sites in the whole country that has that designation. In the meantime, why that went, it is going through the process through Congress or of the application process to become the official National Historic on the National Historic Register. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm talking about that particular area where the Mr. Dortero owns. That's not going to be part of the National Registry, or is the graveyard correct?
The graveyard, I believe, has its own historic registration, and maybe Carranza or somebody else or Anthony Hope could speak to that.
No, I don't.
Mr. Del Toro's exact property is not, but when it's adjacent to or butts up against to that property, then it should be kept to some higher standard, and especially when it comes to code enforcement, because you will have interpretive trails, you will have more people coming through there for tourism and such, and to me it doesn't speak well of the community. It doesn't, and it just is contradictory to having a actual place that's going to be recognized and is recognized nationally, and then you have a county or a government that would allow that type of code violations, and even though it's supposed to be brought back up and you've got livestock, you've got other things, I just think that that's not what the intent was, and it doesn't bode well for trying to get economic development back in through there.
You mentioned the intent, ma'am. What do you mean by the intent? That wasn't the intent.
I don't think it's the intent to allow agriculture in that way for like makeshift chicken coops and putting horses on land that's a lot smaller than what's required, those type of things. I don't think that's the right intent. And then for it to butt up against property and a historic property that's going to bring in tourism and everything, it's just my feeling that it clashes, and it's not necessarily.
Okay. Thank you. You've answered my question. I'm going to go to Commissioner Jones now.
Yeah.
Commissioner Jones.
Ms. Brown, do you work in any official or neighborhood capacity with the Quindaro ruins?
For the record, this is Miss Louisa Libby, that is speaking.
Oh, I'm sorry, Miss Libby.
I am on the tribal council of the Wyandot Nation of Kansas, and we founded that land back in the 1800s and have continued to be part of that area and that community ever since. And yes, we have relationships and bonds with the old Quindaro Museum, the Luther Smith, Marvin Robinson, and we are stakeholders in the national parks and Freedom's Frontiers. So as far as being on a board within that area, if that's what you're asking, no, but in all kinds of other capacities that are important, and being able to bring people there and to welcome them and tour the area and promote the area and be on other boards that also are partners with Quindaro. In that way, yes.
Okay. I appreciate you sharing what your vested interest is. So then, having said that, let me ask you this. Are you aware, because one of the things that I'm trying to figure out in my mind, the parameters and the boundaries for what's identified as the Quindaro ruins, as far as you know, because it seems to be that you got a core piece of land, and then we're concerned, at least the testimony that we've heard now and previously, it's almost a need for knowledge of who are the owners that are in proximity to the portion of land that's been identified and designated as historical property. And so my question is this: are you, as a result of your vested interest, or anybody else that you know of, aware of the owners of land that's adjacent to the Quindaro ruins? Because it almost seems if there was knowledge about that, then perhaps an effort could be made to avoid this in the future. If you know who the owners of this land is that's in proximity to the ruins, that would have a lot of value versus something coming up and then everybody's concerned about it.
That was Commissioner Karen Jones.
I'm sorry, was there a question there?
Yes. Has the effort been made to determine owners of property in proximity to it so that, you know, the people with the vested interest don't have to wait to find this out when there's a petition? Has a proactive effort been made to identify that you're aware of, ma'am?
Yeah, and that was Commissioner Karen Jones, and this is Louisa
Libby, yes. The maps and all of that, there's so much information out there that we could provide, and I could get the people that actually have those maps and everything, we could digitally share them. My understanding, and this is what I've always understood, is if you're standing at the overlook, if you're familiar with that, and you look down towards the river, there's a, it looks like a road or a path that would have goes down towards the river. That would be almost like a continuation of 27th Street. It's my understanding, and always has been, that the land that would be on the east side of that is owned and maintained by the unified government, and the land that would be on the west side of that, and it's a vast number of acres that goes beyond the little core of that road, is Western University Board of Directors. Or the Western University, I'm not sure if they're a foundation or what, but that's who owns that. And Sarah Evans.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna interrupt this because I'm not sure how the question is relevant to this case. The ownership of adjacent properties is not relevant to this particular case. So I guess I'm questioning the relevancy of the question, Commissioner Jones.
Well, I asked it in part just for a proactive, for me, it's.
But to be proactive in getting this meeting to a satisfactory conclusion, can we stick to questions that are pertinent to this case and how we get this case approved or not approved, and not what we're going to do in the future, because we need to satisfy this case here tonight?
Commissioner Connolly would also like to be recognized, Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Connolly.
Yeah, I guess I can understand Commissioner Jones's question, because I mean, we can't call every area part of the Quindaro ruins, and so she was trying to give a site of actually where the Quindaro ruins is. So I'm going to ask this question of Ms. Libby. Now, do you know the other owners adjacent to that site, either on the east side or the west side, that you have communicated with? And the other question that I would like to ask is, Now, you talked about the overlook. There's been some complaints about the overlook over the years, the grass not being cut, some other things. So we get complaints about some other things too. But I guess my main question is the third one. I mean, is anyone willing to buy this land from Mr. Otero? Thank you.
I think that there would be several people that would entertain that. I, for one, in our nation, I think we would, I can't speak for them, but I would entertain buying it. It would just have to know what the cost, and I think there's a group of us that would, in order to protect that and protect the entrance into the sacred area of the cemetery.
Has your question been answered, Commissioner Connolly?
Yeah, thank you. That's good.
Commissioner Jones?
Carson, there
Yes.
is, I believe it's Tashira Mank who's interested in asking another question or speaking.
Okay, I'm going to go to Commissioner Jones first to make sure we get her questions answered.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you. I just want to clarify something real quick. I don't want to lose sight of the issue at hand, but I guess part of the bigger picture related to this case, and I can't speak for you all and say your mission, but my mission is to, okay, the historical significance is not going to go away. And when I think about what the case file says, that Mr. Del Toro purchased this as a delinquent property, you know, how do we avoid being in such a precarious situation, at least to me it is, going forward? And that's part of the point I was making with asking that.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. Thank you. Okay, and I'm sorry, Ms. Sieben, you said there was one last speaker?
For someone who's already spoken, I don't know if you intend to allow people to speak twice on
No,
the
I'm
issue.
closing the public portion of the meeting. I'm not going to now go to staff comment. Or I'm sorry, I'm going to go to Mr. Del Toro to please step back up. And I want to hear back from you regarding the condition of your property and the questions regarding code enforcement and infractions that you've got. The chief biggest complaint that we're hearing tonight, I think, as you heard, is the condition of your property and what steps are going to be taken to ensure that it's going to be cleaned up and it's going to be maintained. And I also want you to address the condition of your animals and how often they are checked on, and what is your plan for maintenance of the animals as well as the property. So we'll go to Mr. Del Toro now.
You guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Please go.
The condition of the property I was mentioned to stop what I was doing. I know last time when we had the meeting at the court back in February, I was mentioned to bring down the what used to be part of the stable. I had started initially back in December or November to knock down the stable, and then I was mentioned to just stop doing what I was doing just to deal with the application process. And then based off the last meeting that we had in February with you guys, I was mentioned to take it down. So since then, I have done that. In regards to the other stuff, some of the violations were there were some chickens on the west side of the property, 3456th Street. So some roosters and chickens, those have all been removed. It was mentioned on the last meeting in February at the court that there was still some roosters and chickens. That was not the case. I had verified and I knew I had taken them out. There has been mention of a variance to be, the variance has to be set in place for the horse. I believe a variance has been, an application has been started that is going along with this process for keeping of the horse. The horse's condition was the ground and everything. The horse wasn't a stable with pine shavings and everything. It was completely dry. Since I was mentioned or told to knock it down, the circular roundabout in that area was built to keep the horse in there. Otherwise, horse could get out of the area. Regarding the trash, there has been some trash along North 31st Street, more towards the backside, also towards the entrance as well. That has not been mine. I know there has been tires even along the road on Sewell Street, which is even west, more west on the property 3456th Street, just on the public street, being knocked down or being thrown along Sewell Street and then into 31st Street. Trash has been picked up. When I purchased the property, there was a lot of trash in there also as well. not where I currently have a horse. But there was a lot of trash and debris in the creek area that has been cleaned up. I think that's one of the battles that's kind of been ongoing. I don't know who throws it out there, but someone goes out there and throws trash along North 31st Street, which was kind of what I requested or asked if I can put or lock the gate that is at the entrance from the park area, yep, right where the mouse cursor is at. But I was informed to keep it open because code enforcement, they mentioned the history on why it was closed and why it should be open now, because there was a lot of trash being dumped in the area. I think building that horse stable, if it needs to be built more south of where the picture or the drawn area, the screenshot was at, I'm very flexible on that. The horse's condition, once the stable is up, will be in a dry environment. There was also mentioning of agricultural, not fit for agricultural. There is no plan for growing crops in the area. The reason that this was mentioned was in order to keep livestock. I believe the code mentions that the property needs to be at least 5 acres. So with that, the application was submitted as the keeping of livestock in the area.
Okay, but you are committed to keeping the property clean of codes and infractions and of debris, whether it's dumped there illegally or not. If it's dumped on your property, it's going to be your responsibility to keep your property clean going forward. And you're fully aware of that and understand that.
Yes, sir, I understand that.
Okay, are there any further questions for the applicant before I close and go to the staff for their staff comments? Seeing none, we'll close this portion of the meeting. We'll go to staff for their comment.
Thank you, Commissioner. This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Urban Planning and Land Use Department. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just a quick clarification on this. There's one agenda item on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and then there's 2 special use permits on the Planning Commission agenda related to this property and the adjacent property of Mr. Del Toro's. For this one on the Board of Zoning Appeals, we're asking for he's asking for a variance to have an accessory structure, i.e. the stable, as there is no primary structure to have an accessory to. And so that is what we're being here. If the Board of Zoning Appeals decides to approve that variance, then we can hear the 2 special use permits for livestock on the property.
Okay, so the recommendations for approval from staff, correct? Any
correct.
questions for staff? Please raise your hand. Seeing none, I will stand for a motion. Please raise your hand to make the motion, and please raise your hand for the second.
Commissioner Carson, I'm just wanting to check, are you meaning actually physically raise their hand or electronically?
Electronically raise your hands. When I say raise your hands from this point forward, I mean to electronically raise your hand.
Thank you.
So we can recognize you to speak. I'll entertain a motion. Commissioner Reasons.
Staff stipulations.
I'm sorry, could you please restate the motion?
Yes, a motion to approve per staff stipulations.
Okay, and I saw Commissioner Cho.
She's unmuted.
Commissioner Cho?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Reasons and seconded by Commissioner Cho for approval, subject to staff stipulations. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
No.
Dewey?
Aye.
Jones?
Yay.
Miller?
Aye.
Pauly?
Polly? She's not, she's muted still.
No.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this appeal, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 5 in favor and 3 opposed.
All right, thank you. Could you please call the next case?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, before I do that, the one person in opposition that submitted pictures of the dumping and stuff, we have turned that over to our zoning enforcement officer, and it is on his agenda to go by there.
All right, thank you.
Our final application on the Board of Zoning Appeals is appeal number 2373, Charles Householder for property at 1101 Orville Avenue. At this time, does any member of the board have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
No.
Commissioner Jim Ernst has his hand raised.
Actually,
Commissioner Ernst?
Actually, it's been up and down a couple times. I was waiting to see if it was working. I had a question on the last, but consider that for staff. We'll consider that passed. I just wanted to make sure it's not working.
It is working, and I do see it, but I did not see it when I was calling for discussion. I apologize, but I have you all in front of me.
Well, my icon did not change, even though I clicked on it. And
My apologies there.
It's up again.
Yep. And down. Okay, I'm sorry. Janet, could you please call the next case? Or you did, excuse me.
I did call the next case.
Okay, Mr. Householder, are you in attendance this evening? Mr. Householder?
Not seeing an attendee with that. Oh, there it is.
He is on the list. There he is, and he is unmuted. Mr. Householder, are you available?
I am, sir.
Okay. If you please go ahead and give us your name and address for the record, please, and tell us about your project.
My name is Charles Householder. I live at 2928 Summit Street, Kansas City, Missouri, 64108. My project is 1101 Orville. It was a land bank owned property, vacant structure on the southwest corner of 11th and Orville. Used to have a couple trailers, and I do believe some transient people living in the trailers down there. I'd like to purchase the property and put a second story on the building to bring it to about 765 square feet for a small single family structure for myself.
Okay, are there any questions for the applicant?
Not seeing any.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request?
If so, please raise your hand.
Seeing none, I will close. Excuse me.
Real quick from staff, just a quick confirmation.
This is Gunnar Hand.
Sorry, this is Gunnar Hand again with the Director of Planning. Just a quick confirmation for Mr. Householder. Our maps are showing an existing house south of the proposed second story. Can you please confirm that this is no longer there?
Yes, it got removed when they took the tanks out. I mean, fortunately for me, they took out the mobile home there at the bottom. And both of those, there's a concrete pad a little bit further to the south there. I think the concrete pad is like 3 foot off of the sidewalk. So it's pretty close up to the sidewalk. So both of those kind of encroached in on that property line. So, and matter of fact, it would have actually been over the property line, looking at it now.
So just to confirm with everybody, it's just this one structure on the site that we're talking about?
Correct.
Correct. The 400 square foot on the northeast, or on the northeast part of the property.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, and is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition? One more time. Seeing none, we will close the public portion of the meeting. We'll go to staff for comment.
Thank you, Commissioner. Again, this is Gunnar Hand, Director of Urban Planning and Land Use Department. We've received no public comments in opposition or in favor of the proposal. We do recommend approval with the stipulations. Again, it's an existing structure and needs to have a second story to it. That's not me. And again, we ask that he receives building inspection department, building permits, as well as he will have to go through an administrative environs review as it is within the environs of a historic landmark.
Okay, are there any questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion. Please electronically raise your hand. Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Miller.
Oh, I didn't unmute. I'm sorry. Move to approve subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Okay. Commissioner Jones.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Jones for approval. Any discussion on the motion? Commissioner Jones, your hand is still up. Is that just from the second? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Cho,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Yui,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve this appeal, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Okay, thank you. This will conclude the agenda for the Board of Zoning Appeals. We're going to take a 5-minute recess and then we will reconvene and start the Planning Commission agenda. Could you make sure we're all muted, please, Melissa?
Yep, I am doing that right now.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I'm going to call the meeting to order in about 1 minute. That was not me.
Diet Coke.
Yeah, you had to clarify it.
I know. I've had that happen at home too. Trust me. It's a hazard of being on video. Yes, sir. Mr.
Are we
Ernst?
ready?
Can you unmute yourself?
Commissioner Ernst?
Repeated the machine. This is not my normal everyday. I was going to ask Ms. Parker if Amigos sounded good.
You were asking me if what sounded good?
Amigos.
Oh, I'm not sure we got that, but anyway, my name is Jeff Carson, and I'm going to go ahead and call the April 13th meeting of the Planning Commission to order. I want to make a few introductions to tonight's meetings. We have on hand with us Gunnar Hand, the Director of Urban Planning and Land Use, Janet Parker, the Administrative Assistant to the Department of Urban Land Use, Rob Richardson, the immediate past Director of the Director of Urban and Planning and Land Use, Melissa Sieben, the Assistant County Administrator. We have the following Planning Commissioners on hand tonight: Commissioner James Ernst, Commissioner James Connolly, Commissioner Joanne Huey, Commissioner Nathan Reasons, Commissioner Jake Miller, Commissioner Susanna Pauley, Commissioner Karen Jones, and Commissioner Cherish Cho. We also have Planning Department staff on the call with us: Byron Toy, Kim Portillo, Michael Farley, and Shayna Chanteau. We also have on hand with us Jeff Fisher, the Director of Public Works, and Robert Anderson, the Asset Manager for the Public Works. And I'm sorry I was remiss earlier at the Board of Zoning Appeals by not introducing Patrick Waters, our legal counsel, is also with us tonight. So I appreciate you all being here this evening and joining us on this special Zoom conference that we're able to continue on with government business despite what's going on with the pandemic. We will try to run this meeting as close to what we do in person as possible. Commissioners, for this meeting, when you need to speak, if you will please raise your hand, I will call on you. You will then be asked to unmute yourself. So Ms. Sieben will monitor things. If you're unable to do it, she will do it for you. But at this point, I'll need you to unmute and mute yourself after your commentary, but I will call on you when it's time to speak. Any questions? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Parker, will you read the opening statement, please?
We would like to welcome all those present and participating by telephone or Zoom to the meeting of the City Planning Commission. Due to the COVID-19 crisis, the members are participating remotely by phone or Zoom. Mr. Jeff Carson is serving as chairman this evening. Chairman Carson, I did not receive any requests from the public to be a part of the meeting via telephone. All requests were for the instructions to sign up for the Zoom webinar. Please note the following instructions for the meeting. If you are joining by Zoom video, please make sure you have an appropriate background and plan to stay visible during the meeting. Please don't get up and walk around. When speaking, if you have not been announced by the Zoom moderator or chair, you must raise your hand feature. When speaking, you need to wait to be unmuted by the moderator or yourself. Planning Commission members, use the raise your hand feature to speak. If you need to recuse or if you need a personal break, use the raise your hand feature. Due to the format, the Zoom moderator will work with the chair to recognize those that want to speak. There will be times when we ask that everyone but the applicant unraise their hand. Be sure to unmute your microphone when it is your time to speak. If anyone is having trouble, you should email planninginfo@wycokck.org, and Secretary Parker is monitoring that mailbox during the meeting. Proper meeting decorum is expected of all participating in the meeting, and anyone who fails to act properly may be removed from the meeting. The city reserves the right to discontinue a meeting if any improper behavior occurs, which prevents the uninterrupted conduct of business. The Planning Commission is a voluntary body of citizens which review each zoning proposal. For all change of zones, special use permits, vacations, and preliminary plan reviews. On tonight's agenda, the Planning Commission makes recommendations to the Unified Government Board of Commissioners, who will then make the final decisions on Thursday, April 30th, 2020. For final plats and final plan reviews heard tonight, the Planning Commission's decision is final, and there will not be another hearing. The format for this evening's meeting is as follows. The applicant will make the opening statement explaining the proposal. Please note that the applicant will be given 15 minutes to present their case. The 15 minutes includes the applicant, consultants, and other members of the applicant's team. Members of the Planning Commission will then address any questions they may have to the applicant. Any persons wishing to speak in favor will be called upon and allowed to do so at that time. Then those persons in opposition will be called upon and allowed to make their statements and ask questions. Please note that each member of the public who wishes to speak will be given 5 minutes to express their opinions. Time may not be shared between speakers. A speaker may request to extend their time, and the Planning Commission may, by 2/3 majority vote, extend any speaker's time in 5-minute increments. The applicant will then answer questions and make a closing statement. The public hearing portion of the meeting will then be closed, and the public will only be allowed to address the commission if a question is directed to them. The Planning Commission will discuss the application and make their recommendation. Also, all items or exhibits submitted via email to the Planning Commissioner staff during the hearing will be retained and become part of the official record of these proceedings. If persons in opposition want to formally protest a change of zone or special use permit, a means is available by a legal protest petition, which can be obtained along with the necessary instructions by emailing the Urban Planning and Land Use Department at planninginfo@wycokck.org tomorrow morning. Any application receiving a unanimous vote of recommendation by the Planning Commission will appear on the consent agenda of the Unified Government Board of Commissioners. Unless there is a request to remove an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the Unified Government Commission, or other interested parties, the Planning Commission's recommendation will be adopted. The consent agenda is heard at the beginning of the meeting at 7 p.m. The Planning Commission will also have a consent agenda as part of their meeting this evening. The consent agenda is the first part of the agenda, and items on the consent agenda are final plats, final plans, or special use permit renewals that have received a staff recommendation to approve. Unless there is a request to remove an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the staff, a member of the Planning Commission, or other interested parties, the staff recommendation on all of the items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Planning Commission at one time. I will read a list of agenda items on the consent agenda, and when I have completed the list, the chairman will ask if there are any requests to remove items. This is your time to raise your hand, be recognized, and request that an item be removed from the consent agenda if you do not agree with the staff recommendation. The Planning Commission is required to disclose contacts about any item on the Planning Commission agenda. Before each item, I will ask if there are any contacts, and members of the commission will be asked to disclose those contacts at that time. Please note that your opinions will be forwarded to the governing body for their consideration in making a final decision. In addition, those who receive notices for this evening's hearing will again receive them for the hearing on Thursday, April 30th, 2020 at 7 p.m. I will now read the items on the consent agenda. Consideration of the March 9, 2020 City Planning Commission minutes. Special use permit application SP-2020-27, Blaine McCann with Piper Unified School District number 202. Renewal of a special use permit for a modular classroom at Piper Middle School at 4420 North 107th Street. Cabela's second plat. Final plat for 2 commercial lots at 10300 Cabela Drive. West Ridge Estates second plat. Final plat for 6 single-family lots at 4401 North 115th Street. American Royal final plat for 3 lots on 9 tracts at 1620 North 118th Street, 11704 State Avenue, and 11602 State Avenue. There's also a corresponding plan review application, PR 2020-9, Cord Maxwell with Wilson LPC, final plan review for American Royal Development at those 3 addresses. Plan review application PR 2020-3, John Odom, final plan review to rebuild Captain D's Restaurant, which was destroyed by fire at 7525 State Avenue. Plan review application PR 2020-11, Alfred Toloza. Final plan review for improvements in force main rehabilitation to pump station number 2 at 300 North James Street. The items I have just read are on the consent agenda. At this time, does any member of the commission wish to disclose any contact on any of the items?
No.
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 Please include the following items as part of the record for all of the items on the consent agenda: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated April 13, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the publication in the Echo for the special use permit, and the notices to property owners. The commission will vote to approve in one vote these items unless someone asks that an item be removed from the consent agenda.
Okay, first of all, Janet, I want to clarify on the special use permit for the Piper School District. That's Unified District number 203. Is that correct? Because in the statement you said 202.
I'm sorry, it is 203.
Right.
I just said it wrong in my statement.
That's all right. Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience as an attendee that would like to have anything removed from the consent agenda for special consideration? Please raise your hand electronically. I'm going to give everybody a minute or so. Anyone in the audience that wants to have anything from the consent agenda removed for special consideration? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone on the commission that would like to have anything removed from the consent agenda for special consideration? Okay, seeing none, I will stand for a motion on the, I'm sorry, Commissioner Huey.
No, I was going to make a motion.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll stand for a motion on the consent agenda. Commissioner Huey.
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Miller.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Huey, seconded by Commissioner Miller to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Joe.
Aye.
Conley.
Aye.
Ernst.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Pauly.
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to approve all of the items on the consent agenda, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I would note that the special use permit renewal, that is a recommendation for approval, and it will go before the Board of Commissioners on Thursday, April the 30th at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
That does conclude the consent agenda, and we will now move on to the non-consent agenda. We have 2 items that we're going to hear together, and then we will vote on them separately. Change of zone application 3218, Benjamin Stevens with Copart. Change of zone from R1 Single Family District to MP3 Planned Heavy Industrial District for outdoor storage of used, damaged, and undamaged, operable and inoperable automobiles, trucks, other vehicles, boats, and construction, farm equipment, and machinery for wholesale, online, and retail auction with accessory office, shipping and receiving, and customer parking at 8600 Gibbs Road. And special use permit application SP-2020-24, Benjamin Stevens with Copart. Special use permit for outdoor storage of used, damaged, and undamaged, operable and inoperable automobiles, trucks, other vehicles, boats, and construction and farm equipment and machinery for wholesale, online, and retail auction with accessory office, shipping and receiving, and customer parking at 8440 Gibbs Road. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated April 13, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated February 13, 2020, and the notices to property owners dated February 12, 2020. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose on this application?
No.
No.
Okay, before I call on Mr. Stevens, I do want to make a couple clarifications on the introductions. First of all, I want to make sure everyone is aware that Sarah White, Unified Government staff working for the Public Works Department as a stormwater engineer, is also on this conference. And I also want to acknowledge Rob Richardson. His new title is the Director of Development Coordination and Customer Service Success, is also on the conference call. So I will now call on Mr. Stevens. Are you available?
This is Ben Stevens. Oops.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes, there it
Okay.
is.
Could you go ahead and give us your name and address for the record, please, and tell us about your project?
My name is Ben Stevens. I live at 2522 West Steinbeck Court in Anthem, Arizona. And I am a manager of all mini properties for Copart. And this is a wonderful opportunity for Copart. It fits our bill and it sits right next to IAA, and it's a perfect place for us to do a new facility.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Stevens from the commissioners? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open up the public portion of the meeting. I see one hand up from a Mr. Judd Treeman. Mr. Treeman, are you available to speak?
He's been unmuted, or is?
Yes, I was. That was an earlier raise. I was trying to speak on the applicant's counsel, but if I just wanted to say I'm available for any comments or questions.
Okay, so Mr. Treeman, you represent Mr. Stevens?
In Copart, correct.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public portion of the meeting. I will get staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Gunnar Hand with Director of the Urban Planning and Land Use Department. I'll get down to this. There was one public comment from Mr. Kendall, the Wyandotte Economic Development Council, in opposition. It was in regards to the specific use. This is a master plan does designate this as an employment area, and we recommend approval with the subject stipulations for a special use permit for 2 years. We've been working with Copart and continue to work with Copart at another location for a similar type use.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, I will stand for a motion first on the change of zone. Commissioner Miller.
Move to approve the change of zone subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Miller for approval. Commissioner Reasons?
I second the motion.
And seconded by Commissioner Reasons. Any discussion on the motion?
Commissioner Conley has his hand raised.
Commissioner Connolly, did you want to speak?
Yeah, that was just to second the motion.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Any discussion on the motion for approval? Seeing none, roll call.
Cho,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Aye.
Ernst, Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of the change of zone application, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. Now I'll stand for a motion on the special use permit. Commissioner Miller.
Move to approve the special use permit subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Commissioner Connolly.
Second.
It's been moved for approval by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Connolly. Any discussion?
Commissioner Jones has her hand raised. I'm not sure if it was to second.
It was, thank you. It was only to second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, roll call.
Cho,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of SP-2020-24, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard once again on April 30th at 7 p.m.
Mr. Chairman, we have 2 applications that we're going to hear together. Special use permit application SP-20-19-117, Fred Del Toro. Special use permit to keep a horse at 3447 North 31st Terrace. And special use permit SP-2019-118, Fred Del Toro. Special use permit to keep chickens and livestock at 3456 North 31st Terrace. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated April 13, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated November 14, 2019, the notices to property owners dated November 13, 2019, January 8, and February 24, 2020, and all of the testimony from the previous Board of Zoning Appeals meetings and the testimony that was given tonight at the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting is all a part of the record of these special use permits. At this time, does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to these applications?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, these applications were held over from the February 10, 2020 meeting in conjunction with the corresponding appeal number 2356 for the applicant to have a meeting with the stakeholders, the people within 200 feet, and people who took former Director Richardson's card and let him know they would like to be included. The results of that meeting were included in the staff report, and they were further discussed at the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Del Toro, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and allow him to talk. He's in.
Mr. Del Toro?
Yes, sir. I'm still here.
Okay, great. Is there anything, we're going to hear both of your cases simultaneously, one for the horse at 3447 and one for the chickens and livestock at 3456. Is there anything additional that you want to add on these two cases?
No, sir. One item. The livestock on 3456, there would be a perimeter less than 4 feet or 5 feet per the code. That way the livestock does not get out of the property and go onto the street or onto the cemetery or public road.
Okay, and can you explain what type of livestock you plan to have on that property?
Just some sheep, goat. There's no specific number set in mind, probably 6 or 8. I still haven't really processed the whole thing since I've been going through this process of the application.
When you say 6 to 8, do you mean 6 to 8 in a combination or 6 to 8 of one breed?
Combination, sir.
So a total of 6 to 8
Yes.
Livestock.
Yes.
Okay, and what about the number of sheep?
I
mean, sorry, the number of chickens.
The number of chickens, I'm not sure what the appropriate number for that one is, but there was a lot of questioning from the opposition side that they did not want chickens. I don't have a set number for that, but I would keep the number to a minimum to take that into consideration for them also as well.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Del Toro from the planning commissioners? Okay, seeing none, I will open up the meeting to the public. Is there anyone who wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request?
Mr. Chairman, Secretary Parker.
Yes.
I would note that at the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting, I stated that I had received the 4 emails in opposition, and they were also for these 2 special use permits too.
Okay, are those in the packet, Ms. Parker?
No, I just received those today.
Okay. Commissioner Pauly.
Yes, in regards to the applicant thinking they could keep 6 to 8 animals, it clearly states stipulation number 3 that the maximum number would be 6 goats.
So I'm sorry, I don't have the staff report pulled up in front of me, but Mr. Del Toro, you would have to be in compliance with the staff recommendations if your requests are approved tonight. You understand that?
Yes, I understand.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Director Hand. Just as a quick clarification, staff spoke to Mr. Del Toro today. We feel that we should lock down a number as per the recent conversations as well as the public comment.
And that is what's stated in the report. Is that correct?
No, we'd like to get it on record tonight. Right now, it just generally says livestock and chickens. We were thinking a little more 15 chickens and up to, again, we didn't speak about sheep, but we were thinking 6 total. It could be a combination of goats and sheep, but I think based on public comment, we would recommend we lock down the number tonight on record.
Okay, Mr. Del Toro, based on that statement, can you go ahead and give us a number for the livestock and then for chickens?
The chickens, 15.
So no more than 15 on the chickens?
Correct, no more than 15.
And then on the livestock?
On the livestock, which would be a combination of goat and sheep, if possible, 15, not 15, sorry, 10, but no more than 8. I'm not sure about the number. I'm at the top of my mind right now.
I'm sorry, you're fading off, sir. I need you to speak into the microphone.
A combination of the goats and the sheep. If I can get with 10, I'd be happy with that, but I will agree to a number that's placed on me tonight.
Okay, so the applicant's request is for 10 total livestock and no more than 15 chickens. Further questions? Commissioner Connolly.
Come on, Connolly.
Hello? Yes.
Yes.
I don't know if I can tell or not, but is there a barrier between his land other than the gate? Is there another barrier to the graveyard? Because I would hate for some of that livestock to get over there and start eating some of the areas of the grave sites there.
Well, the property that's going to have the livestock would be the one that's across the street from the cemetery property. Is that correct, Mr. Del Toro?
The one where the mouse cursor is at, that's where the livestock would be at the cemetery. Cannot be viewed on this screenshot in here. It's further up north.
Okay.
So there is some property in between.
Commissioner Connolly, did that answer your question?
Okay. I mean, there's still a question of whether is there a fence at the grave site or not? Because like I said, I'd hate some of the livestock to get loose and be kind of on the grave sites eating some grass or something like that. Is there a fence?
No, sir, there's not a fence in the cemetery. I'm aware. One thing that I would do on my end, I would install a perimeter on the 3456 property where the livestock would be kept at in order to prevent from them to getting out of the property.
All right, thank you.
That was Commissioner Connolly. Anyone else? Commissioner Pauly. You need to unmute Commissioner Pauly.
I got her.
Thank you. Just to be clear, on the staff report that I'm looking at, it's saying no more than 6 goats. So are we at 6 goats or are we at 10 goats?
Applicant is requesting up to 10 sheep or goat total and up to 15 chickens. That's the request being made tonight.
So we're ignoring the staff stipulation of 6.
No, we're not ignoring anything at this point. That's the applicant's request. So once we get staff comment, we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Further questions from the commissioners? Okay, I'm going to open up the public portion of the meeting. Anyone who wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and I will go to Planning Director Gunnar Hand for staff comment.
Again, this is Gunnar Hand, Planning Director. As we carried over the public comments from the Board of Zoning Appeals, again, we had 6 total in opposition, no letters in support. The special use permit is for 2 years, so it'll come back in 2 years for additional review. Again, it's for 1 horse on 3447, and sorry, that's PowerPoint's a little messed up. And then again, as per our conversation with Mr. Del Toro today, we had recommended 15 chickens or come to agreement with 15 chickens and up to 6 livestock. We can amend that to goats and sheep. It would be as per Planning Commission's direction to set those final numbers.
But your recommendation is for no more than 6?
Yeah, we would stick with our 6.
Okay. Any questions for the Planning Director? Commissioner Ernst?
This is the question I had from the last meeting, but it's relevant to this one as well. In the last meeting, we had a number of people who looked at the pictures that we had and said that nothing had changed. Mr. Del Toro said that he had cleaned up much of the mess other than what he was told to stop when this all started. Can anyone from staff tell me the status of the property and whether it has been cleaned up or not?
Yes, Commissioner. Again, this is Gunnar Hand. There has been some cleanup. The photos that you see in the staff report as well as this presentation are when we started this case through a notice of violation and requested him to come in for a variance as well as the special use permit. He did note in the previous case that he did sort of stop looking into it as soon as it became into the entitlement process. We also mentioned that we are going to send out zoning enforcement to look at it today. The point I would make is it is a place where there's a lot of illegal dumping, and it happens on a regular basis. It's not necessarily all contributed to Mr. Del Toro, but in that last case for that single property, he did acknowledge that he would maintain it to be clean and orderly, and I would recommend that we add that as a stipulation for this one as well, as it recognizes both properties, i.e. both sides of the road.
Mr. Ernst, was your question answered sufficiently?
I think so.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Reasons.
Yes, Jim, I just wanted to let you know, I drove by this property the day after our February meeting, and I drove by it a week and a half ago in lieu of this happening. And it did seem that his area was a little more cleaned up from what it was before. But Jim, there's a lot of spaces around there that needs a lot
Commissioner
of
Reasons, when you're addressing Jim, who were you addressing, please?
Jim Ernst.
Thank you.
Commissioner Ernst, sorry. I just letting him know when I did there, I saw a lot of other lots that were not Mr. Hildaro's property that were very unkept. So.
All right, thank you. Any further questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion on special use permit SP 2019-117 for the property located at 3447 North 31st Terrace for the horse. Commissioner Pauly?
I would like to move to deny the petitioner's request based on the lack of improvement to the property, knowing that this meeting was coming up and it was important to have it looking reasonable.
Okay, is there a second to that motion for denial? Commissioner Connolly? No, I'm sorry, Commissioner Ernst.
Second.
Okay, the motion is for denial on the special use permit located at 3447 North 31st Terrace for reasons stated by the maker. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, this is on the motion for denial. Roll call, please.
Cho,
Aye.
Conley,
Commissioner Conley,
Commissioner Connolly. The motion is for denial.
Aye. I said aye.
Ernst?
Did you hear me?
No,
We got it.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
No.
Pauly,
Aye.
Reason.
No.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend denial of this application due to the fact that the property was not cleaned up prior to the meeting passes 6 in favor and 2 opposed.
Okay, thank you. This will be heard once again on April 30th at 7 p.m. We'll now stand for a motion on special use permit SP 2019-118 for the property located at 3456 North 31st Terrace.
Commissioner Reasons,
Yes, I move that we pass this per staff stipulations, and because I did see that the property had been kept up since the last time.
Okay, motion is for approval. Commissioner Reasons. For clarification purposes, we're going with staff recommendations of 6 livestock and up to 15 chickens. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Motion for approval made by Commissioner Reasons with said stipulations. Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Miller.
Second. I'm at the unmute.
Okay, motion to approve by Commissioner Reasons, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Commissioner Cho.
So Commissioner Reasons, you're saying that the property, when you went to go see it, that the dumping that you saw there was not necessarily Mr. Del Toro's property?
That is correct. There is a lot of property around there that was not related to his, that faced the road. And that whole area is in blight, whereas his area looked a lot better compared to the others that were around it.
Any further discussion on the motion for approval? I see Commissioner Connolly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you say a lot better, I mean, there's understanding that things are supposed to look a certain way. I mean, by you saying a lot better, there was no trash, no tires. Some of the stuff we seen in the pictures, all that stuff was cleaned up.
Well, the stuff that we saw in the pictures, of course, with the old makeshift stable and stuff, that of course is still there, which is what he wants to tear down to build his new barns. But as far as old tires and things like that, I didn't see any of those from the road when I was driving by. I did not drive into his property. I drove by the road going up to the cemetery and did an inspection of the cemetery and then came back down. In his area, there were no dumping of any sort on his property or trash floating around.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, motion is for approval, subject to staff stipulations. Roll call, please.
Joe,
Aye.
Conley,
Nay.
Ernst, Yui,
Aye.
Jones,
Nay.
Miller,
Aye.
Polly,
We couldn't hear you, Miss Polly.
You're muted, Commissioner Polly.
No. Bill?
Reasons,
Aye.
Carson.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of SP 2019-118, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, and with the clarification of up to 15 chickens and a total combination of livestock of 6, passes 5 in favor and 4 opposed.
Okay, thank you. This will be heard once again on April 30th at 7 p.m.
Mr. Chairman, that takes us to our next special use permit application, SP-2020-25, Christy Pretty. Special use permit to keep small livestock, chickens, ducks, goats, and a mini pony at 3425 North 87th Street. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated April 13, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated March 18, 2020, and the notices to property owners dated March 19, 2020. At this time, does any member of the Planning Commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this case?
No.
Okay, Ms. Pretty, are you available?
Yes, she's now
Okay,
allowed to speak.
Could you go ahead and give us your name and address for the record, please, and tell us about your request?
Speaking is Larry Pretty with my wife, Christy Pretty. We're at 3425 North 87th Street. We've lived on 87th Street 30 plus years. And would you like me to go ahead with the request?
Yes, please.
Thank you. First, thank you to the council for the measures they're taking right now to this Zoom meeting. This is really great. Thank you very much for everyone and their effort there to keep everyone safe. My wife is looking for a special use permit for chickens, goats, and other livestock that she's kept for this on our neighborhood and our street for 30 plus years while we've lived here. The yards change configurations numerous times as we've adapted for different animals and stuff. We've raised 7 children through 4-H through here, and we've also got 11 grandchildren now in 4-H that they all use the animals to show during Fair Week. My wife is also a member of the K-State Extension Office. She works with, she's part of Wyandotte County Fair Board and the poultry project leader for 4-H too. So she's very knowledgeable with the animals. Wyandotte County Small Animal Pickup uses her because she has all the cages for the poultry during the fair to house chickens when they have a numerous or a large number of chickens they have to pick up from a property, she brings them here and takes care of them while they're waiting for disposition. So she would like to, we've never knew we needed a permit for the animals we were keeping, but we're applying for that now to come into compliance and would like the everyone's blessing.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, seeing none, I will open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request?
Mr. Chairman, this is Secretary Parker.
Yes.
I have a letter that I received from an attorney that I have been asked to read into the record in opposition.
Okay, Mr. Pretty, could you go ahead and mute your microphone while we hear
Yes,
other
sir. I
testimony? Thank you.
apologize.
That's all right. Thank you. And go ahead, Ms. Parker.
Dear Mr. Carson and fellow members of the Planning Commission, I am grantor and trustee of the Carolyn A. Barkley Trust dated August 30, 2019. The trust owns 3403 North 87th Street, parcel 242000, and 3301 North 87th Street, parcel 242001. Because of the current COVID-related restrictions and my personal health issues, I cannot have visitors, even a notary, enter my home. I cannot venture to the offices of Evans and Mullenix to execute a notarized or other statement, and it would be unwise for me to venture out to the Planning Commission meeting on April 13th. Therefore, I am writing to express my hope that you reject the application for a special use permit SP-2020-25, and I request that this letter of declaration be entered into the record. As the owner of the two properties located directly to the south of 3425 North 87th Street, I have the following concerns. Number one, the 1.21 acre size of 3425 North 87th is small. The notice letter dated March 20, 2020 provides no information on how many of each type of small livestock Ms. Pretty intends to keep on her property. Therefore, there is no way to determine whether noise, odor, groundwater contamination, and other issues will be nuisances for the adjoining property owners. Number two, the common fence between 3425 North 87th Street and Ms. Barkley's property at 3403 North 87th Street was built to contain horses, and it will not contain smaller livestock. I have no intention of replacing my fence. I have not granted permission and expressly prohibit any small livestock Ms. Pretty might be allowed to maintain to enter or stray onto my property. I will take no responsibility for any small livestock that might enter or stray onto my property, and I do not grant permission for Miss Pretty or anyone else to enter onto my property for any purpose, including the retrieval of any stray small livestock. In the event Miss Pretty erects enclosures on her property for her small livestock, the size must be large enough to accommodate them in a healthy and humane manner, and the enclosures must be far enough away from property lines to limit the potential negative effect. Number four, in the very near future, I intend to list my properties located on North 87th Street. To have a collection of small livestock located next door on such a small property is very to have a negative impact on the selling price. Even the pending special use permit proceeding is likely to affect the value. And number five, this property is within the city limits. The neighbors have reasonably relied on the prohibition of this type of use within the city limits and have a reasonable expectation that the issues listed above would not occur within the city limits, especially where there are neighbors in such close proximity. In conclusion, I honestly and sincerely wish Miss Pretty well, but must respectfully request that her application for a special use permit be denied. Respectfully submitted this 8th day of April 2020 by Carolyn Sue Barkley, trustee, by Mary Ann Cancel.
All right, thank you. Anyone else, anyone in the audience like to speak? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public portion of the meeting and I will ask Mr. Pretty to come back on the line, please. Can you address some of the concerns of your neighboring property owner in the letter that was read? Were you able to hear most of the concerns that were stated in the letter read by Ms. Parker?
Yes, sir. It's quite lengthy, and I don't know if I can address them all. I have a hard time remembering them. But to her concerns, the properties both adjacent and behind us both house cattle and guineas, which are large chickens. Directly across from us, they have horses. So the neighborhood has lots of livestock. It always has. I've lived here for quite a long time. I think longer than Miss Barkley's owned the land. And it's been a farm area. They have cattle up and down the street. As far as her water, we are downhill from Miss Barkley's property, so they can come out and check the storm water, but our livestock's kept up. Chickens, the goats are very small. They're about the size of a small dog, maybe 15, 20 pounds. They're miniature goats. We do keep the large number of chickens for the animal pickup. We keep them for a short time, and they're in a special stable so that they're away from the other animals, just in case there's any kind of disease. My wife does the testing for the city for when the fair comes around. So I hope that would address those concerns. As far as where they're kept, they are kept on the opposite side of the property from her property. There is quite a I'd say 4 to 6 feet between the property line and the closest to the animals.
And have you had any instances where any of your animals have ever gotten onto the neighboring property?
In 30 years, I've never had anything on Miss Barkley's property. No.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Commissioner Connolly, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. My question is, now you said that you've been already having chicken, ducks, and goats and mini ponies for over 20 years, or how long have you already had these things?
Over 30 years, sir. We've lived I believe this neighborhood, I've lived here for 32 years.
And so what makes you request a special use permit now?
The city inspector came by and she said she was just doing a drive-by and said that we needed a permit.
Okay. Now I heard you said that somebody kind of brings chickens and they kind of come back and forth, I guess, in transit for different reasons. Go ahead.
Okay.
So how many chickens and ducks and goats and mini ponies are you planning on having? You can answer.
Personally, sir, as few as possible for me. My wife loves them, though. She's in charge of 4-H, so I support her, and she has the animals for the kids in the in 4-H. As far as the chickens that we keep normally, she keeps the chickens for the children to show at the fair. Not only our grandchildren and children, but our for other children in 4-H. And she also every year goes to K-State and purchases 50 broiler chickens that the children in 4-H raise that they show at the Wyandotte County Fair every year. And those chickens are processed and donated to either a local charity or to the 4-H families, depending on who wants them. Then we also we work in conjunction with the large animal pickup when they have a large number of chickens to pick up, or goats or ducks or small animals my wife is very familiar with. She's works with them to house them until they're disposed of one way or the other, whether the owner goes through court proceedings and gets them back, or if they go back to animal control for whatever disposition there is for that.
All right, thank you.
Okay, that was Commissioner Connolly. And any other questions for the applicant and follow up based on the testimony we heard from the letter read into the record? Okay, seeing none, I will go to Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Land Use, for staff comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, we did receive the letter that was read in today for in opposition. We also received a letter from the property owner directly to the northeast in favor. We do recommend approval with the stipulations. Again, it's an R1 zone, which requires a special use permit to hold livestock and chickens, and so we're recommending a 2-year special use permit with the existing proposal for number of animals. This was straight from the applicant's request, so I believe this should match the numbers that are on the property currently.
Okay, thank you. I have a question from Commissioner Connolly.
Yeah, I guess he was unable to give me an exact number, but I do see in the response that there's supposed to be 11 mini goats and 7 ducks. Now, with that acreage of, because that was one of the person that was petitioned against it, or I guess in the email, he was saying that he didn't think he had enough property to be able to take care of all that. So staff agreed that he does, or?
We agree that they do with, again, the only stipulation in the zoning code is that if you're an agriculturally zoned and over 5 acres, you can have animals by right. Everything underneath that or above that in the zoning code requires a special use permit in consideration.
And
sorry, we did, as it relates to the letter of opposition read into the record, we did connect with animal control, and they've only had 1 violation in the area, and it was related to a dog. Not the animal.
Okay, so would it been as R1? There's no regulation of how many chickens and livestock that he can have and ducks.
That's correct.
This is Commissioner Connolly and Gunnar.
Sorry, correct.
Going back and forth. Sorry, guys.
No, thank you. I was trying to interject that earlier. Is
Oh,
that answer your
okay.
question, Commissioner Connolly?
Well, I thought there was some kind of regulations for R1 about the amount of chickens and some goats. He says that they're not, so I'm okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any further questions for staff? Seeing none, I will stand for a motion. Commissioner Miller?
Move to approve subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
A motion to approve by Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Ernst?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Ernst. Is there any discussion for the motion to approve? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Cho?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Pauly?
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of the special use permit for 2 years, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes. 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard once again on April 30th at 7 p.m.
Mr. Chairman, our next special use permit application is SB-2020-26, Mike Riley with JMK Partners, LLC. Special use permit for grading for possible future development at 1151 North 126th Street. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated April 13, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated March 19, 2020, and the notices to property owners dated March 18, 2020. At this time, does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
No.
Okay, is Mr. Riley available or his representative? If you would, please raise your hand. Mr. Riley? or his representative? Okay, it doesn't appear that anyone is here right now. Can we go ahead and move this to the end of the agenda?
Sure, and I'll go ahead and call the next special use permit.
Thank you.
And that's SP-2020-28, Tamara Luce, home occupation special use permit for short-term rental Airbnb at 2751 Esplanade Lane. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated April 13, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Wyandotte Echo dated February 13, 2020, and the notices to property owners dated February 12, 2020. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No.
No.
Okay, is Tamara Luce available? Lucci? Please raise your hand if you're in the room. Tamara? There you are. Can we go ahead and get her unmuted, please?
Hello.
Here we go. Yes, can you go ahead and state your name and address for the record, please, and tell us about your project?
Yes, my name is Tamara Luce, Luce. My address is 4028 West 73rd Street in Prairie Village, Kansas. And I am representing my son, Jonathan Hammond, who's owner of the property at 2751 Esplanade. And we are requesting a special permit for short-term rentals for use for Airbnb.
Okay. Ms. Luce, does your son live at this property?
Yes, he does.
So will he be renting it out while he's living there, or is this while he's out of town? Or
no, while he's out of town.
Okay. Okay. Questions for the applicant from the commission? Okay, seeing none, I'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Please raise your hand electronically. Okay, seeing none, we will close the public portion of the meeting and we will go to Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning and Land Use, for staff comment.
Thank you, Chair. This is Gunnar Hand, Director of Planning. We've received no public comments in favor or in opposition to this application. We do recommend approval with the following stipulations of a 2-year special use permit. Again, I would note specifically that the applicant provided their guest manual that does address any of the concerns that we would usually have in regards to a short-term rental.
Are there any questions for the Director, Commissioner Miller?
So are we looking at this for 2 years, even though I know that he lives on the property, but they're saying that he's going to rent it out when he is out of town, which I don't know how that falls on the provision how we usually balance between 2 years and 1 year.
Typically in the past, if we've had someone as a manager, and we can ask Mrs. Luce if she is, Mrs. Luce, are you still on the call?
Yes, she is.
Who is going to be available if there is a problem with the property while your son is out of town? Is there a designated property manager or someone who is going to address any type of noise complaints, parking complaints, things like that?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I am available, as well as my son is also available. And there is a strong family presence with the property while he is gone out of town.
Okay. And you said you're in Prairie Village, so you're approximately 15 to 20 minutes away from the property if there should be a need for someone to be on hand?
Yes, no more than 15 minutes.
Okay. Commissioner Miller, does that satisfy your question?
Well, I mean, when staff's recommendation, they said 2 years. And so that was really my question of, if we've really got someone 15 minutes away, shouldn't we be looking at 1 year as opposed to 2? Or maybe I'm diving too far into it. I don't know.
I think in the past, this is what we have done when we've had someone either on site or within a certain proximity to manage the property when the owner is away. Am I incorrect in that?
I believe you're correct. If they're on site, we would give it 2. I'm not 100% sure about the proximity. If it's at the Planning Commission's discretion, we can amend that to 1 year.
Okay. Commissioner Connolly.
I'm in agreements with Commissioner Miller. That is how we have previously done it. If no one was living on the site, we would always give 1 year.
Okay. Commissioner Ernst.
Going to throw in the same comment. Mr. Miller simply reminded me what I'd forgotten, and that was this was 2 years, and I believe it would be the first where there was no one next door or living there at the time to go 2 years. So again, I'd support 1 year.
Okay. Any further questions of the director? Okay. The recommendation is for approval for 2 years. Is there a motion? Commissioner Miller.
I'll move to approve subject to the stipulation of the staff report, but I would like to move for 1 year.
Okay. Motion to approve with stipulation changing it for a 1 year approval made by Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Reasons. Commissioner Reasons.
I second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Miller for approval for 1 year, seconded by Commissioner Reasons. Mr. Connolly, do you have any discussion?
I'll just second in the motion.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion for approval made by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Reasons? Seeing none, roll call.
Cho,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Huey,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Hawley,
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, I motion to recommend approval of SP-2020-28 for 1 year, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions. Passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard once again, April 30th at 7 p.m.
Our next application is Special Use Permit SP 2020-30. Special Use Permit for a short-term rental Airbnb at 3846 and 3848 North 123rd Street. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case: the city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated April 13, 2020, the application and other documents, plans.
Keep going, please.
Pictures and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the notice in the Y. Echo dated March 19, 2020, and the notices to property owners dated March 18, 2020. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No. Miss Chiluri, are you in the audience?
She has been allowed to speak.
Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, I am.
Sorry.
No issues. My name is Kiran Chaluri. Yes, I am.
Could you go ahead and give us your name and address, please, for the record, and then tell us about your project?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much again for this opportunity. My name is Kiran Chaluri. My address is 9701 West 152nd Street, Overland Park, Kansas, 66221. And the address of the property is 3846 and 3848 North 123rd Street, Kansas City, Kansas 66109. It was mentioned, this is for a special use permit request, short-term rental request at this property.
And this is a multifamily unit that you're going to be using both properties for that purpose. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, we'll open up the public portion of the meeting. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Please raise your hand electronically. I see Mr. James Woods.
He's allowed to speak.
Still showing him as being muted.
Okay.
Should be able to speak.
Mr. Woods, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, could you go ahead and give us your name and address for the record, please?
I live at 8400 New Jersey Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas, 66112.
And your name again, please?
James Woods.
Thank you.
And I've received this letter. You know, we couldn't make it today because we were both ill. And I don't really know what this is all about, other than the fact that they want a short term. For the letter reads that they want to rent it for a short term. But from what I'm hearing him saying that he has other plans, and you know, we wouldn't be comfortable with that until we find out what his plans are.
Okay, the request has been made for a short-term rental, which are rentals for less than 30-day period. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and Mr. What kind of questions can we get answered for you tonight?
Well,
Mr.
you just say rental for 30 days. I don't know what's his plans or what he planned to do on the property during that time.
Well, the plan or the request tonight is to be able to have the opportunity to rent both of those units out for people that come into town or for whatever reason for a period not to exceed 30 days at a time.
Well, maybe it doesn't apply to my property because there's no units on it.
Well, it would not apply to your property unless you live in close proximity to his.
I live in close proximity. My address is 12240 Donahoe Road, right there in the corner of Donahue and 123rd.
Right. Well, there's no plans to change the property other than the fact that there will be people staying there for a period of less than 30 days at a time.
Well, I don't have a structure there, so if that's what he's talking about, it probably doesn't include me.
There's no intended changes to be made to the property.
Okay.
Did you have anything else that we could get answered for you this evening?
No.
Well, what is?
I'm going to need your name and address, ma'am, for the record, if you're going to speak.
My name is Joan Woods.
Joan Woods, okay, and you reside at the same address as Mr. Woods, correct?
Yes.
Okay, what's your question, ma'am?
Is he asking for the other property that is near our property? Because our property doesn't have anything on it. It's just.
But this is for the multifamily unit that is pictured on the screen right there that we're taking a circle with the arrow around it.
Yeah.
Each one of those units will have the opportunity to be rented for periods of not more than 30 days at a time.
Mm-hmm.
But there's not going to be any additional construction or any changes to the dwelling or anything like that. It's just for him to be able to operate it as a short-term rental versus a long-term rental.
Mm-hmm.
So what is he going to change about it?
He's not changing anything about the property, ma'am. He's just wanting the ability to rent it as a short-term rental versus a long-term rental, which requires this special use permit tonight.
Yeah, I'm kind of sure how that go, but I don't think this apply to me because I don't have a structure there at the present, not on mine. That's probably someone else's duplex that he's talking about.
Yes, sir. It won't apply to you at all.
My address is 12240 Donahoe Road.
Right.
Right on the corner there.
It's my understanding the only thing that's going on at the property right now, and Mr. Chaluri, if you want to clarify that, is that you have a dumpster outside. I'm assuming you're doing some interior renovation work.
Yes, sir. I just I bought the unit about a month ago, so we're just doing some interior renovation and everything.
Okay. Well, see, I didn't know what the structure was at until now. Now that I need to take a look at it, you know. So, but right now, I don't think I have no objection.
Okay.
So, if you say you would have another follow-up meeting on this on April the 30th, is that what you said?
If this is approved or denied tonight, there will be a second hearing on this on April 30th at 7 p.m.
And if you have opposition, then you can post them.
You could also show up at that time as well.
Okay. Well, this give me a chance to investigate what he got in mind.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak?
No.
No, not here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public portion of the meeting. Mr. Chiluri, just for the record, could you please state what's being done to the property at this time that requires the use of the dumpster and any other type of work that's being done?
It's just interior remodeling.
No exterior modifications at this time?
Actually, we did change the siding to the, because it was a very, its siding's been rotten. There's a lot of wood rot and everything. So we changed the siding. We just got it painted, exterior painting. That's about it. But otherwise, yeah, there's no exterior, other than change the siding and the painting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the public portion of the meeting. I'm going to go to the Director of Land Use and Planning, Gunnar Hand, for staff comment.
Hey, Mr. Chair, again, this is Gunnar Hand with the Department of Land Use and Urban Planning and Land Use. There's been no comments in favor or opposition, aside from the inquiry that we just heard. Staff recommends approval with the following stipulations. Again, this one carries a 1 year. Mr. Chiluri did mention in his public meeting that he would hire a property manager to manage both of the properties on the parcel. But again, it's not owner occupied and there's no one on site. So we're sticking with that 1 year on this one.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the Planning Director? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion. Commissioner Miller?
Move to approve subject to the stipulations in the staff report.
Okay, Commissioner Jones?
Second.
The motion moved to approve by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
I got Cho.
Aye.
Conley.
Aye.
Ernst.
Aye.
Huey.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Holly.
Polly?
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of this special use permit for 1 year, subject to the staff's comments and suggestions, passes. 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard once again on April 30th at 7 p.m.
Mr. Chairman, we have one more application, and then I want to remind the commission that we have a report immediately following that.
And we have one more to call that we put to the end of the agenda.
Oh, that's right. Thank you.
Carson, I do have a person in the public with their hand raised, Brian Glasser.
He's the applicant on this next petition.
Yes. Mr. Glasser's case is getting ready to be called.
Okay, just want to let you know.
Thank you. Go ahead, Janet.
Vacation application S-2020-5, Brian Glasser. Vacation of a street at 508 Ohio Avenue. Please include the following items as part of the record for this case. The city's currently adopted zoning and subdivision regulations, the official zoning map for the area in question, the city's currently adopted master plan for the area in question, the staff report and attachments dated April 13, 2020, the application and other documents, plans, pictures, and maps submitted by the applicant in furtherance of the case and contained in the official file, the publication in the Echo dated March 19, 2020, and the notices to property owners dated March 18, 2020. Does any member of the commission have any contact to disclose with regard to this application?
No. Okay, Mr. Glasser, we'll go ahead and unmute your mic. If you would go ahead and give us your name and address for the record, please. Well, there we go.
Hello,
Mr. Glasser?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, sorry about that.
That's all right.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian Glasser, as you said. I'm here on behalf of the owner of 508 Ohio, Mr. Thomas Vanderbrand.
I need to get your address, please, for the record, Mr. Glasser.
I currently live at 2734 Bellevue Avenue, Kansas City, Missouri, 64108.
And you're here on behalf of who?
Mr. Thomas Vandenbrand. the owner of the property.
Okay.
I've submitted. Yep, I've submitted for this vacation for the property at 508 Ohio. This application was what followed in accordance with the special use permit condition based on a previous meeting I had with you guys, and with respect to the parking situation at 508 Ohio, which we didn't have any opposition at the initial meeting. I had this work and the subsequent drawings provided and submitted complete by licensed surveyors at Anderson Survey, and their stamps there. I did learn today via Michael Farley that we might be able to even avoid this vacation and just work a right-of-way with the Public Utilities Department, which would probably lessen the burden to take care of that additional square footage that would be a result of this vacation. But we're open to either idea, whichever is the least burden to, Wyandotte and the people. So,
Commissioner Carson, we have one public at the podium, just to let you know, whenever you're ready to recognize them, I will unmute them.
Thank you. Okay, are there any questions for the applicant from the members of the commission? Okay, seeing none, we will now go to the audience, and we'll start with the person that is in the commission chambers. If you would please go ahead and give us your name and address for the record.
I'm Martha Wolf Holland. I live at 513 Split Log, Tennessee, Kansas. I'm just catty corner from my 508 in the alley. And I have questions about this. On the survey that is on the computer, I can't, okay. It's showing wrong place, the map is wrong. The alleys are off. It's showing that Mayock Lane goes straight into the alley. It doesn't. So that's wrong. And then the measurements are wrong because the south side of Ohio on the east, the southeast, is only 28 feet. It's not 52, 54 feet. It's only 28 feet there from Mayock Lane to the curb, the drainage curb down at the bottom of Ohio. And there's not 54 feet on the north side. Part of the lot 508, the street does not go all the way down because 508, that where the red line is on the east side of 508, that's where the fence is. But then there's another fence about 3 or 4 feet over, and that's their property line. It just goes down, and all they fenced off was the level side when they put these houses there. And what I was told was they want to give this street lot to them. Is that true? Or are you just going to let them use it?
That's a question for the planning director, Gunnar Hand. Can you answer that question, please?
Yes, this is Gunnar Hand, planning director. The application before us is for a vacation of the street, which means we would hand that portion of the street identified in this survey, which is the northeast quadrant of the end of that stub of Ohio Avenue,
you're showing
to the applicant. They would have to provide, and I'll show you a picture here. They would have to provide easements for the storm sewers accordingly, and those would be retained property of the unified government.
Okay, but see where your red thing is? That's supposed to be 30 feet on the east side. The whole thing all the way down to the other curb is 30 feet. I measured it. The whole thing, the whole street is only 30 feet down there. It's not 60 feet like it shows on here. Ohio is not 60 feet wide. And it's 54 on the north, 30 on the east, and 28 on the south down there. That's the measurements. These measurements are off.
Oh, sorry.
The measurements are wrong.
This is Gunnar Hand, the director of planning. You're measuring the street. This is from the public right of way. So it goes from the parcel line to the parcel line, not necessarily from curb to curb.
Did you understand the response, ma'am?
So you're only giving them half of the 30 feet. You're only giving them 15 feet of that.
We're giving them from the parcel line, the proposals from the parcel line to the center of the street, which is 30 feet.
No, it isn't. From the
parcel line is behind the sidewalk.
Is that right?
The parcel line, ma'am, is behind the sidewalk. It is not from the sidewalk to. Do you understand? Do you understand the response? Your measurements are not starting from the correct area.
Okay, but anyway, there are a lot of people around there who have no parking. And people, even with parking in front, you're not guaranteed parking in front of your house. I am not for turning over any property without doing a big public hearing for everybody down there, not just this house, because within 4 blocks, you have 5 other houses that have no access back to an alley. 2 of them were taken when the highway came in. These houses were placed here after the highway came in. When they put these houses on these lots from the bottom, they knew there was no way to make a parking space or a garage on those lots, and they accepted that they would have to do street parking. Giving away that extra, it says that this is just, not used. That's not true. Over on the southwest corner is Holy Family Social Club, our club in our school. And our church is up on 6th Street. We use the parking. We have no parking because that's how we built. The playground looks like a parking lot. It's not, it's just a playground. It's like, 10 feet up, 12 feet up. And there's no access because there's 2 houses on the side. We use all this. If somebody parks there, which is unusual at night, except when there's functions at church or at the school. I know 2 days a week they do see, the education for the Spanish and the Burmese, because they're in our parish. We have bingos and everything. We have our Slovenian Fest. The problem with telling somebody that you can have these parking spaces for free and they're yours forever is ridiculous. People have lived here 70 years and haven't had parking guaranteed to them. The house right over here next door to me, 511 Split Log, they have no access to do parking. They have a house on the front of their lot and on the back where the alley is. There's no way to put parking on there. Are you going to guarantee them that they can have the 15 feet in front of their house and nobody else can park there? And then down south, Orchard, there's like 2 houses or 3 houses down there that have no parking because the highway took it. They're right up there. It's even further down. It's than the map. But there's like I said, I let's see, how many do I have? I have like 6 lot numbers. So I would ask that you maybe just see how the rental goes first of all, because aren't they on the 2-year or 1 year? They're on a 1-year trial because this is their first time. So I would say, let's see, and maybe reserve it for them. Because we have people coming from all over the metropolitan area to our bingos and our Slovenian fests, where they won't know if, that's private parking, and we don't want them to get towed. So why don't you put a sign up there and says, please reserve for 508, thank you. And we can put a note in the church, because that was for, the lady there was handicapped. Nobody ever parked in her space. Nobody. There was a handicap sign. Even people with handicap signs never parked in her space. The nun lives over the school. Nobody parks in front of the school where she wants to park. we just do that down there. So I don't think that anybody, especially an owner out of town, should be given 3 free parking spaces. Not at this time.
Okay.
Exactly what you're doing.
Okay. Is there any other points that you'd like to make, ma'am?
No, just that. I think.
All right. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience that wants to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? Okay. Can we have Mr. Glasser back to the microphone to address the concerns of the audience member?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. How you doing, ma'am? I've actually lived in Strawberry Hill before at 616 Elizabeth Ave for over a year, so I'm aware of the parking situation in Strawberry Hill. You know, it is tight, and that's why this is the only parking spot available directly in front of the home, and obviously because of the highway right there. And kind of like I said in the initial, I guess, orientation of the request, I don't have any issues with if we could achieve some sort of right of way with the Public Utilities Department. I have no issues with that without being guaranteed a parking spot, because, you know, sometimes our guests and the owner at times when he comes into town wouldn't even have a car. They'd probably just Uber or take some sort of temporary transportation that drops you off. So that's not, you know, it's really because the formality of having to have the dedicated parking in order to, you know, achieve the special use permit. But if we can achieve that through a right of way
compromise.
Yeah, I have no preference on either one. I mean, I would have loved to have not spent $600 on the survey and just gotten this done an easier way. But, you know, this was brought up today, so I'm open to compromise. Obviously, I know how it works there in Strawberry Hill. Everybody's really tight, and there is no guaranteed parking, like you said. So I'm aware, and more than willing to hear what everybody has to say about that.
Okay, we will find out. I just want to make sure you don't park in that nun's parking spot, because we don't know what'll happen to you after that happens. Okay, we're going to go ahead and close the public portion of the meeting.
I believe our attendee is
Yes, ma'am.
raising her hand. I don't know.
Yes, ma'am. Did you want to say something else before I close the public portion?
Oh, me? Yeah, I would like to. When he says that's the only parking, it isn't. If you look at the map, they have both sides of Mayock Lane from Ohio to Northrop that are free.
I know, ma'am. What he's addressing is the criteria that the unified government has given him for his special use permit. So we're going to address that here in just a minute. Okay, we'll get some clarification. But his comment was directed to the staff based on a requirement for him to get his license.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and close the public portion of the meeting, and I'm going to go to Director of Planning and Land Use, Gunnar Hand, for staff comment. Mr. Hand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, other than the comment that we just heard, we've received no other public comments in for or against. We do recommend approval with following stipulations. Based on the conversation that we just had, we had been in contact with the applicant today because we had heard that the lady who spoke, I apologize, I forgot your name already, was going to come in tonight. The other option that he had mentioned briefly was a right-of-way use agreement with the Department of Public Works. That would relieve him of the responsibility to maintain the vacated portion of the street, as well as sort of record a easement under the use of utilities, which would be an additional cost. I think the point that we would make, again, as was required by the special use permit that was previously approved, this parcel has no alley access like a lot of the other parcels in and around this street, as well as the rest of Strawberry Hill. So they don't even have an opportunity to have a rear garage, again, based on I-70 coming through and other right-of-way acquisitions. So the right-of-way use agreement is another opportunity. It would relieve them of the responsibility for maintenance. It would be very similar to what the lady acknowledged, which they would basically be able to park 2 cars backing into that end of Ohio stub, and they could mark it accordingly. If we did want to pursue that with the applicant's blessing, I would recommend that we hold this case over in case, because we cannot guarantee that they would receive a right of use from Public Works at this meeting.
Other questions for the director? Okay, Mr. Ernst, you had your hand up before. Mr. Ernst, go ahead and unmute your mic. Did you want to speak?
Little lag time on the mute. I think Mr. Hand answered my question in that we might want to consider holding this over and changing it to the right of way. These don't have to be published. There's no neighborhood meetings. I have a feeling if this had been more widely distributed, there would be a lot more people online or at City Hall raising objections. But if we could satisfy the requirements for the rental property and leave it open to people, I think that would be a win for everybody.
I think that's what we're looking for. Is there any further questions or comments based on the director's comments? Seeing none, I will stand for a motion. And Janet, excuse me, before I go to Janet, going back to Planning Director, Mr. Hand, if we were to do a holdover, what would be the date of that meeting and how long would it take to get the necessary information to look at the right of way?
We put in the request for that very timeline with Public Works. It kind of came down to the wire, so we hadn't received response before the meeting today. I would recommend at least, I don't know, we do have Jeff Fisher on the line, so maybe he could answer us how long it usually takes to get a timeline with us. But I think considering the holdover, I would recommend 30 days.
Okay, Janet, what would be the date of that meeting if we did a 30-day holdover?
That would be May the 11th.
May the 11th would be a 30-day holdover. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion. Commissioner Ernst?
I would make a motion to hold this over to whatever they said the next meeting would be.
Janet, can you clarify? Because I only wrote down May and I got sidetracked.
May 11th.
May 11th. I must have been the only one that got sidetracked. So May 11th holdover.
Yes,
Is
sir.
there a second for that, Commissioner Miller?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved to hold over till May 11th, made by Commissioner Ernst, seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion on motion to hold over? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Cho,
Aye.
Conley,
Aye.
Ernst,
Aye.
Yui,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Miller,
Aye.
Hawley,
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to hold over this vacation application until the May 11th, 2020 meeting to pursue a right-of-way agreement passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. Director Hand, will you reach out to the applicant to make sure that the necessary paperwork gets put into motion for this? All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, Janet, would you call the last case that was moved to the end of the agenda?
Yes, that is special use permit application SP 2020-26. Mike Riley with JMK Partners LLC. Special use permit for grading for possible future development at 1151 North 126th Street.
Mr. Riley, are you in the audience this evening? I don't see anybody wanting to speak. I want to go ahead and go to Director Hand, Director of Land Use and Planning. Do you want to make any comments on this file, on this request?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Again, this is Gunnar Hand. We've received no public comments in opposition or in favor. We do recommend approval with the following stipulations. We had a conversation with the applicant in regards to dust mitigation. The proposed grading is will have an all cut and fill happen in site, so it's a balanced site. And they are proposing that the grading for future development will take about 2 to 4 weeks. So we had put in a couple of stipulations in regard to making sure that that is mitigated if it gets dry or dusty.
I want to make one other comment. You said during the run-through meeting today, this was a self-contained grading.
Yes, it's a balanced site, so they won't be hauling anything in or out to complete the project.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was known.
Mm-hmm.
So your recommendation is for approval?
Correct.
Okay, is there anyone in the audience that showed up tonight to speak in favor of or in opposition to this request? I'm kind of going a little out of order. I apologize. And seeing none, I will see if there's any questions for the director from the Planning Commission. Commissioner Connolly. There you go. Nope. Commissioner Connolly, unmute your mic.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I'm sorry. I was hitting it to make a motion.
Okay. All right. Is there any discussion before I go to a motion? Seeing none, I'll stand for that motion, Commissioner Connolly.
Make a motion to approve the staff stipulations.
Okay, motion to approve made by Commissioner Miller. Commissioner Connolly. Commissioner Miller?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Miller. Any discussion? Commissioner Ernst? Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Joe?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Hawley?
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, that motion to recommend approval of that special use permit subject to the staff's comments and suggestions passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. This will be heard once again on April 30th at 7 p.m. And we do have one final item on the agenda, correct, Janet?
Yes, and Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I should have asked at the very beginning, but as when this presentation is over with, if I could have 60 seconds of the commission's time, I'd like to update you on special use permit renewals and what I'm doing with those, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Our last item on the agenda is presentation from Robert Anderson, Asset Manager with the Public Works Department on the Capital Improvements and Maintenance Program. And I did receive the presentation late this afternoon, and I tried to email it out to the commission members, so hopefully you got it.
Okay. Mr. Anderson.
Chairman, this is Jeff Fisher, Director of Public Works. I'd like to give a quick intro.
Okay, thank you.
We apologize for not getting that presentation to you sooner. And given how deep we are into the evening, we'll try to make that brief, but certainly would entertain questions you may have afterward. And so we appreciate your time tonight. You may recall, or some of the Planning Commission may recall, in November, we made a presentation to initiate a new approach to how we select projects for the CMIP and requested some feedback. We had a similar conversation with the commission in the fall, and then reported in January, late January, to the commission some outcomes of this new system, and it's pretty exciting. We wanted to do the same with you tonight. Then at the end, give you an idea of what the 5-year CMIP will look like. Of course, with this new system, where the CMIP process is still a little bit fluid with budget, and given the as you opened up this meeting with all the things going on in the world, we are anticipating some changes in the budget due to the downturn in revenue. So that still makes it tough for us to know exactly what the CMIP or recommend a CMIP to you tonight. So anyway, I'm going to hand it off to Rob Anderson to highlight this system and those outcomes. I think you'll appreciate this, very much based on data and other good information with still a human element to it. And then I'll conclude the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, and thank you, Commission and staff, for your time this evening and your accommodation managing a meeting via Zoom. Also, it appears that Gunnar Hand is getting a proper UG introduction during the course of these meetings. So welcome aboard, and happy you're getting a baptism by fire here.
Yeah, horses and goats will hold us up every time.
Yeah. So if you don't mind allowing me to share my screen, I think it's not letting me broadcast while you're still sharing. Thank you. Okay.
Rob, I had to change a setting too. Otherwise, you
Okay.
wouldn't be able to.
Yep, you're in.
Yeah. Also, I want to thank you, especially Melissa Steven, that for helping out on the technology side here. Okay, so big picture, the capital maintenance and improvement plan and projects that you're used to seeing. We're, like Jeff said, we're trying to establish a standardized method for evaluating how we handle these projects. And the reason why is because we need to provide a deliberate, smart, and balanced approach to how we assemble the capital investment program. What we've done, just to cover before, you should all be familiar at this point that we brought this information to you last fall. We've continued to iterate on this process and improve it. We've sought those weighting information from you and the Public Works Standing Committee. And that information has been weighted, and the different both planned and unfunded projects have been scored and evaluated using this method. So after taking your input and the Public Works Standing Committee meeting information, we've come up with this type of weighting based on the criteria that we helped outline with you. And just to reiterate on the why, is because we have more projects in the pipeline than we have adequate funding for. So here you can see that there's a laundry list of items, and we need help prioritizing them. And that was the purpose behind this process. So how do we go about forming the system? The first step is to identify the needs. That's either coming from engineering staff, from the public, or commissions, and engagement with community stakeholders about what the needs are in the community. We map those needs. We analyze those needs based on the different data sets that we have compiled into the parcel information. And we score those needs, and we rank those needs or prioritize them based on different project categories and types of traditional CMIP projects. So in addition to the raw data behind the information, we've produced some engagement information pieces here. So for each project, it gets scored and analyzed, and that information gets shared with during the same process of the budget cycle. So depending on what projects we have identified either in the CMIP or in the unfunded list, we generate their rank order score based on those individual criteria. And then in addition to that, we compute a composite score based on the weighted matrix that you provided input for us last fall. So to review some of the items we did in the last year and into this year, we've gathered the input criteria, we've produced a data-driven ranking process. We have a scoring committee that's working on the human input side of things, and we have created some CMIP budget scenarios that are kind of playing out in real time during the course of this budget process right now. And right now we're just continuing to refine this process. And tonight we're presenting the findings to you as we did so in January. And it's beginning to have impacts on what the 5-year CMIP looks like. So quickly to review how that shook out, we had a request last December from Commissioner to compare that to the existing projects that were selected in the 2020 CMIP to kind of give a breakdown of what this looks like. And for illustrative purposes, we threw in here the road preservation program. So even though this isn't a traditional CMIP project, I just wanted to showcase here what an impact that has on the community based on the weighted matrix composite score that you've helped us build here. So the highlighted in blue text, if you can see in color, is the 2020 projects. All the other projects marked with 4 nines are either unfunded or some of which have already been assigned and allocated to different future budget years. But at the time of the ranking process here, those budget years had not been assigned. So as you can see down here, there's a 2023 project. Right now, this information ranks all projects as like projects. So there's both linear projects, meaning roads, and point projects, meaning bridges and buildings. So this information should have been provided in your handout. Just kind of rifling through these real fast and to move on and hand it back to Jeff Fisher to review a handful of projects that are outlined in the CMIP to come.
Thank you, Rob. As I mentioned, this is still fairly fluid, but we have good confidence in the things listed here that will take place in 2021 or a few years after that. Water pollution control is essentially our wastewater group, and there's a well-defined path for that group for the long term due to our partial consent decree with the Environmental Protection Agency and Department of Justice. There's a couple of things there. A new sewer maintenance facility. I think this is a smart project. We combined the 2 projects with the police tow lot and identified a site that we believe works well for both. And we believe we can get economies of scale out of that and have a great facility. It's near the Fleet Center over off State, if you're familiar with that. So it's in close proximity to a key asset already. Buildings and Logistics underwent a fairly thorough analysis of a good portion of the large portfolio of buildings that the UG has and has a well-defined way to go about maintaining those assets now at the highest level and looking for opportunities to combine and contract and manage those facilities long-term. Of course, we have fire stations on the horizon, a animal control facility, some real serious work to the ground floor of City Hall. And then in engineering, pavement preservation, street preservation remains a high priority for the department and the UG. Citizen survey in the last couple of cycles has pointed to that as the #1 priority amongst the community. We have some intersection safety improvements, and then what we are exploring right now is a possibility of a large streetlight project that may span several years. I think that's an exciting project. We can figure out how to fund that. And then various facility relocations, buildings and logistics. John Kelly developing a strategy for me and CAO to consider and ultimately commission, of course. Now, I will say, as I mentioned in the fall, this system will take us a few budget cycles to fine tune. The Planning Commission's really important to this process. I would say by this time next year, we should have a well-defined set of recommendations for you to consider. provide feedback and endorse for the full commission. And I'll take any questions you may have.
Great. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Are there any questions for Mr. Fisher or Mr. Anderson? I am not seeing any.
I think there should be a really hard question. They've hung around.
I know. I'm just trying to come up with one.
Plus, they've worked so hard on this.
Nobody's close by to throw anything at me, but so I'm going to pass. But are there any questions? This is pretty comprehensive. I love the composite scores and the way that they looked at things and prioritizing everything for the community. Any other comments or questions? And you all needed approval on this evening. Is that correct? Okay. I'm going to go over to the Director of Land Use and Planning. Got her hand. Do you have any comments you want to make before I entertain a motion? Did we lose him? He left early. Did he get off at 9:30? Okay, we're not going to hear from the director.
He just went home, even though we can see him.
He's the only one that's actually
Wait,
here. There he is. There he is.
He's unmuted.
There we go. Mr. Hand, do you have any comments before I entertain a motion?
You can sign.
And you're still muted. There we
Can you
go.
hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I had to unmute at a different location now that I wasn't sharing my screen. I apologize. I have no comments other than to say that Mr. Fisher and I have a meeting tomorrow to pick each other's brains about the work that we're doing on all these fronts. I do look forward to the coordination with the Department of Public Works. I actually did meet with his staff on a couple of these items today as well, just to get a primer. So we're looking forward to it. And you know, I think a lot of the long range advanced planning work that we do here in our department always kind of cites projects that end up on this list. So we look forward to talking about it.
Okay, great. Any questions before I entertain a motion? Commissioner Connolly. Commissioner Connolly, do you want to go ahead and make a motion?
No, I guess my question. So what are we approving the process, or are we approving a budget amount? What are we approving?
The list of projects is what you're looking to approve that they're bringing forward to the commission. Basically, that you don't see any issues with it.
Oh, I didn't see the list of projects. I'm sorry.
That's what's been showing on the screen. Have you seen the screen? This is Melissa Stephen.
Yeah, no, I've been looking directly at the information, and so there's a list of projects.
The ones that were prioritized for 2020. Is there, Mr. Anderson or Mr. Fisher, can you go back to the 2020 projects that were on the screen?
This is actually the 2021 through 2025.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's confusing.
I don't even know what day of the week it is.
It's Monday.
Okay, there we go. Okay, so I guess based off of that, some of those have some 999. So we're approving that if it's got 999s.
Those are unfunded projects.
Right. So how do we approve unfunded projects?
I think we're primarily looking for a consensus on that we're headed in the right direction on the process, and the projects that are on the 21 through 25 are in our best interest.
And that was Commissioner Fisher's comment.
Actually, Public Works Director Jeff Fisher.
Public Works Director, Mr. Jeff Fisher's comments.
Thank you.
It is nearing the
So
Mr. Connolly?
So I guess, I mean, it says a testing a process. So I guess, so what we approving the process, or are we approving all these projects? Because there's a lot of projects under here that's not funded. It's got some 999. So I guess that's my question. What are we approving?
Director Fisher?
Thank you. Yeah, not asking you to direct unfunded projects. Again, just trying to see if there's a consensus that we are heading in the right direction with this new system, and that the slide, what slide is that? I think it's the last slide, the 21 through 25 projects, or that you endorse those projects.
But the Board of Commissioners, will they have any final determinations on whether anything gets prioritized over another one?
Yes.
Okay. So we're approving in concept the direction you all are headed and the projects that you would like to see completed at some point. But there's a lot of moving numbers.
Commissioner Carson?
Yes.
Melissa Sieben again. So the idea here is under state statute, we're required to bring these projects, the 5-year plan annually to the commission prior to vote of the governing body for the budget. The idea is that if there's any things that you would find not in conformance with the master plan, say if we had land that wasn't incorporated or something of that nature, and we were going out and sewering it and putting in roads and you guys hadn't seen anything, that would be something that would cause a red flag. In this case, it's a little bit of an oddity given that we're almost nearly fully incorporated in Wyandotte County, and Kansas City, Kansas itself actually is. But the idea here is that none of the public projects being brought forward to you to see tonight would cause issues with conformance with the master plan.
Does that clarify everything for you, Commissioner Connolly?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions? Commissioner Reasons. Unmute your mic, please.
All right, sorry about that. I'm looking here, it says building and logistics, City Hall, ground floor and plaza structure improvements. What's kind of going to go in with that? Is that going to help with the blight of that front entrance to that building?
Well, that is a good question. I did have John Kelly on standby, but I may have lost him.
This is Public Works Director Jeff Fisher speaking.
Yeah,
Jeff, I'm here. This is John Kelly, Buildings and Logistics Director. And what that project entails is taking the current plaza area that you see with the sidewalk strips and the brick and the old fountain and some of the roof membrane that we have on the back eastern side of the building, and it's going in with just a basic repair of doing some all new concrete and some structural component to the deck to where we could go back in and repurpose the ground floor, which has 30,000+ square feet of available space that we could potentially use to take some of our folks in other leased areas throughout the county and get them back into a building that we currently use. So when you talk about blighted areas, we are doing some enhancements to the exterior of City Hall with some lighting, and we'll do some lighting on the outside up and around the building, and it will be cleaned up, but it won't have we had a presentation probably about 14 years ago that really showed a lot of enhancements with new fountains and such, and the cost for that was extremely high. So this is just a kind of a basic repair so we can get the building back into use and keep water from infiltrating into the ground floor of the building.
And is that going to include, like I think you said this, but like repairing the brick and concrete all along there? It's all chipped up and broken up as well?
Yes, all that will be coming out. It'll be all new concrete throughout the whole perimeter of the east, north, south, and west entrance of City Hall. So all those brick pavers that you've seen all these years will be coming out.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve and move this on to the Board of Commissioners for final approval. Commissioner Miller.
Move to approve.
And Commissioner Reasons. Commissioner Reasons.
Second.
Has been moved to approve by Commissioner Miller, seconded by Commissioner Reasons, to move on to the Board of Commissioners. Any discussion? Commissioner Jones.
No, I didn't have anything. I was just going to second.
Okay, thank you. Okay, no further discussion. Roll call, please.
Joe?
Aye.
Conley?
Aye.
Ernst?
Aye.
Huey?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
Miller?
Aye.
Pauly?
Aye.
Reasons.
Aye.
Chairman, that motion passes 8 in favor and none opposed.
Thank you. So this will be heard again on April 30th at 7 p.m. And then Janet, you wanted to have the final word?
You know that, of course.
Of course.
I just wanted to, we've had discussion the last couple of months I've been working with one of my interns, and we have contacted every applicant through the end of December of this year as to whether or not they're going to renew their special use permit. And that entails about 80 contacts. And so people that have said yes that they were going to, I have emailed them a new application packet along with a copy of their old one, so they can use it as a guide. And then we have given them the deadline to submit their application so that they can ensure that the month that they're getting ready to expire, that they will be heard by the commission. Now we're playing a little bit of catch up because of, some in the past that we hadn't heard from the last couple of months, but we are trying to be proactive on that. And I just wanted to let the commission know what we had done the last couple of months.
Okay, Commissioner Connolly, do you want to make a comment about that?
Well, she knows I like to thank her for that. She knows I'm always about that expired special use permit. So thank you very much, Janet.
There you
That's
go.
why I wanted to give that update just to
So we're ending on a positive note all the way around. Okay, so unless anybody has anything else for the good of the order, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Before I do so, I just want to thank you all for your patience as we work through this. I want to thank the Unified Government staff for being here and being supportive of the way we're doing this and keeping government rolling during the pandemic. So I appreciate all the efforts that's being done, and I appreciate you all working for us. Welcome to Gunner. Crazy first meeting. But we look forward to working with you and getting to meet with you face to face in the future. I wish you all a safe drive home tonight, and we'll see you next month in some fashion. Good night.
Bye.